Has a shiver ever traced its path down your spine as you unfurled the brittle pages of an archaic manuscript? Or perceived the silent, unblinking gaze of unseen entities lurking within the deepening gloom of a gas-illuminated chamber? Such visceral sensations resonate deeply with the profound potency inherent in Gothic literature, narratives that insinuate themselves into the most shadowed corners of the psyche, their spectral whispers echoing across the annals of time. I bid you welcome to this realm of my chronicles, where we shall plumb the abyssal depths of these persistent, haunting phantoms. Brace yourselves, for this day we embark upon a perilous expedition into the mist-enshrouded thoroughfares of Victorian England, seeking to unearth sagas of deathless hunters perpetually craving the vital essence of life, canvas visages that bear the relentless march of time, while their living counterparts defy decay, forever suspended in an immutable youth. Intellects of formidable brilliance, torn asunder by the eternal schism of virtue and malevolence, and ancestral estates concealing ancient truths best left undisturbed within their hallowed walls. These represent but a mere glimpse into the pantheon of enthralling terrors, whose chilling narratives patiently await their unveiling. This is Obsidian Vault, your designated custodian and escort through the labyrinthine, shadowed passages and flickering, candle-illuminated sanctums of Gothic literary tradition. Accompany me now, as we embark upon an exploration of 16 harrowing chronicles of dread, narratives that have relentlessly besieged the human imagination across countless epochs. Let our journey commence, a plunge into the profound chiaroscuro of the Victorian psyche, where monstrous entities lie in wait, not solely within remote, crumbling fortresses, but deeply embedded within the very core of the human spirit. Dracula, the unquenchable, eternal craving. Lend me your undivided attention, and I shall recount an epoch when the sacred demarcation between vitality and oblivion became perilously indistinct. An era when a primordial malevolence traversed vast distances, migrating from the remote, craggy peaks of the Carpathian Range to infiltrate the very pulsating core of metropolitan Victorian London. This was an epoch heralded as an age of enlightenment and advancement, where the twin beacons of scientific inquiry and rational thought purportedly cast their luminescence into the most obscure recesses of human experience, when the formidable dominion of the empire extended its colossal reach across the entirety of the known world, and when a quintessential English gentleman, such as Jonathan Harker, could innocently embark upon a voyage to the secluded, enigmatic lands of Transylvania, ostensibly for a mere transaction concerning property. Yet, within that far-flung territory, nestled atop a formidable sheer precipice, a venerable fortress stood, within which an entity of profound antiquity and boundless patience lay in silent anticipation. There resided Count Dracula, a scion of nobility possessing an aristocratic demeanour, yet whose ancient eyes held the profound, weary wisdom of countless centuries, perceiving them as mere ephemeral blips in the vast expanse of eternity. Into this unfolding horror stepped Abraham van Helsing, a Dutch savant whose profound understanding pierced the veil of conventional science, venturing deep into the esoteric doctrines governing the spectral realm. He possessed an unsettling prescience, recognizing truths that eluded or were actively denied by his contemporaries, that certain malevolent forces defied the rational confines of modern scientific inquiry, and that some monstrous entities cloaked their predatory nature beneath a veneer of cultivated elegance. The tragic fate of the exquisite and unblemished Lucy Westenra marked her as the Count's inaugural sacrifice upon the hallowed, yet now tainted, English earth. Her chilling metamorphosis, from a radiant young woman into a ravenous nocturnal entity, served as an ominous premonition, a dark herald of Dracula's insidious designs. The gruesome finality of her demise, a stake piercing her heart, her head severed, her mouth choked with garlic, was eclipsed only by the profound, existential terror of the monstrous being she had been compelled to become. Subsequently, Mina Murray, Jonathan's betrothed, found her very essence transformed into the contested ground, the spiritual crucible where this epic conflict between primordial malevolence and enlightened human spirit would ultimately be decided. The harrowing tableau wherein Dracula compels her to partake of his own vital essence, an unholy sacrament forging an indissoluble, blasphemous bond, endures as one of the most profoundly unsettling passages in all of literary history. The narrative's chilling tendrils stretch across the vast expanse of Europe, from the gaslit, mist-shrouded thoroughfares of London to the untamed, craggy defiles of the Carpathian Mountains. A desperate, harrowing undertaking. This became a relentless hunt for a chthonic entity, one who held sway over predatory wolves, could dissolve into ethereal vapor, and found his unholy repose within desecrated soil. Yet, this formidable creature, despite his formidable supernatural might, was paradoxically bound by an ancient, immutable code of limitations. He was forbidden entry into any dwelling without explicit invitation, recoiled in terror from the sacred crucifix, and could only find his unholy slumber within the consecrated earth of his ancestral domain. Bram Stoker's profound literary brilliance transcended the mere invention of a monstrous figure. It resided in his masterful construction of an entity defined by its inherent, unsettling paradoxes. He was at once aristocratic and bestial, exquisitely refined, yet utterly savage a being who perversely proffered the promise of eternal existence through the very act of its violent usurpation. In the terrifying visage of Dracula, Stoker artfully crystallized the latent Victorian apprehensions concerning burgeoning sexuality, the influx of foreign elements, and the primal, often unsettling, forces simmering beneath the polished facade of societal order. The Count's violent annihilation at the novel's zenith, his throat rent, his heart impaled, symbolized a multifaceted victory. The ascendancy of modern enlightenment over archaic superstition, of Christian faith over pagan darkness, and of unified human endeavor over isolated, predatory malevolence. Nevertheless, his spectral influence, a pervasive shadow, has only lengthened and deepened with the inexorable march of centuries. For even as Dracula met his definitive end within the confines of Stoker's narrative, he simultaneously attained a distinct, more potent form of immortality within the vast, shared tapestry of human consciousness. This is a literary undeath, a perpetual narrative existence that guarantees his chilling saga will be recounted and reinterpreted for as long as humanity harbors an innate dread of the unseen horrors that dwell within the encroaching shadows. Thus, the authentic potency of Dracula resides not solely in his capacity to instill terror, but in his profound ability to personify primal anxieties that effortlessly bridge the chasm of his era and resonate deeply within our contemporary psyche. The spectral Count persists, an eternal sentinel from the netherworld, biding his time for an invocation to breach the veil anew. The portrait of Dorian Gray, a chilling chronicle of beauty's insidious decay, a chamber of exquisite refinement, where intellectual brilliance effervesces with the vivacity of vintage champagne, and the pursuit of beauty ascends to the reverence of a sacred doctrine. Within this ethereal, almost hallowed ambience, our gaze first falls upon the peerless Dorian Gray, a youth endowed with a pulchritude so flawless, so utterly sublime, that it compels the artist Basil Hallward to forge his magnum opus, a painted likeness ensnaring the very essence of youth in its pristine, unblemished glory. Then, into this delicate tableau, strides Lord Henry Wotton, whose eloquence, like liquid silver, distills a beguiling and subtly venomous philosophy. The sole recourse to vanquish a temptation lies in succumbing to its allure. His insidious whispers ensnare Dorian's receptive mind, akin to a poisoned nectar. As Dorian contemplates his own reflection within the beholding the painted visage, a dreadful yearning takes root within his very soul, that the canvas should bear the burden of time, whilst his own form remains eternally untouched by its ravages. Certain desires, once articulated, possess an irreversible potency. They cannot be unmade. Some pacts, once sealed in the shadows, defy all attempts to be dissolved. Thus commences the inexorable plunge into Dorian's moral abyss. A chronicle of absolute beauty's insidious decay, the elevation of raw sensation to the paramount position. Every transgression, Every act of callousness, every unchecked indulgence, leaves no discernible blemish upon his seemingly angelic countenance, yet profoundly distorts his hidden portrait, sequestered within a forgotten dust-shrouded attic chamber. The canvas itself transmutes into a chilling ledger of iniquity, a stark visual testament to a soul's relentless putrefaction. Recall the tragic fate of Sybil Vane, the nascent actress whose tender heart Dorian callously shattered, propelling her towards a desperate, self-inflicted demise. Consider, too, the grim destiny of Basil Hallward himself, challenging Dorian regarding his profound moral corruption, merely to be met with a swift and brutal blade pressed against his jugular. Consider the shadowed opium dens Dorian habitually seeks out, in pursuit of increasingly arcane and forbidden sensations, as conventional delights turn insipid upon his jaded sensory perception. Concurrently, in a hidden chamber, concealed behind a bolted portal, shrouded in a violet pall, the painted image undergoes its ghastly metamorphosis. Once comely features contort into a grotesque visage of malevolence. Limpid eyes acquire a chilling cunning. The lips, which once conveyed only guileless purity, now curl, imbued with the dark cognizance of atrocities beyond utterance. This spectral canvas reveals Dorian's authentic essence, his very soul rendered manifest, even as he glides through the gilded salons of London's elite, outwardly immutable, eternally youthful, a captivating facade, concealing an abyss of depravity. Oscar Wilde's singular novel, a work of profound audacity, sent tremors through the rigid edifice of Victorian society, not solely due to its veiled homoerotic currents, but more profoundly for its audacious subversion of the era's entrenched ethical paradigms. Within the tragic arc of Dorian's existence, Wilde meticulously dissects the dire repercussions of an aesthetic philosophy pushed to its ultimate, chilling conclusion. The perilous schism between inherent beauty and moral rectitude, the disjunction of outward semblance from intrinsic being. The narrative's harrowing zenith unfolds with an inexorable, tragic finality. Dorian, tormented by the spectres of his transgressions, yet defiantly unrepentant, assails the cursed canvas with the very blade that extinguished Basil's life. In that cataclysmic instant, the infernal, supernatural covenant is irrevocably inverted. Attendants later discover a decrepit, withered, and grotesque cadaver sprawled upon the chamber floor, whilst, from the resurrected canvas, Dorian Gray gazes forth, restored to his pristine, unblemished comeliness. Wilde's enduring magnum opus persists not solely as a chilling Gothic narrative of spectral dread, but more profoundly as a penetrating philosophical inquest into the intrinsic essence of artistic creation, aesthetic allure, and ethical principles. It poses profound inquiries that resonate with disquieting pertinence even today. What ultimate tribute would one render for perpetual youth? What dire consequences unfold when the realm of aesthetics is severed from the bedrock of ethics? How many among us sequester our own allegorical portraits, concealed even from our own conscious perception? Within the enigmatic figure of Dorian Gray, Wilde forged not merely a fictional persona, but an enduring, potent archetype. The captivating fiend, whose inherent depravity lies perpetually veiled beneath an impeccable, alluring exterior. A somber admonition cloaked in resplendent literary artistry, a chilling chronicle of terror crafted for an epoch consumed by the superficiality of outward presentation. A stark reflection cast upon a society prone to conflating genuine virtue with mere outward respectability. Behold Frankenstein, the contemporary Prometheus. Our focus now shifts to an altogether distinct monstrosity, one not forged in the crucible of primordial malevolence, but rather birthed from the relentless crucible of human ambition. Amidst the spectral shadows of a summer's eve in 1816, upon the tranquil shores of Lake Geneva, during a macabre contest of spectral tales amongst literary luminaries, an 18-year-old woman experienced a vivid, waking terror that would ultimately conjure forth one of literary history's most indelible spectres. From Mary Shelley's profound vision emerged Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, a narrative commencing amidst the unforgiving embrace of ice, as Captain Walton's Arctic Odyssey stumbles upon a gaunt, tormented Victor Frankenstein, relentlessly tracking his abhorrent progeny across the desolate frozen expanses. This is a narrative intricately nested within another, a labyrinthine matryoshka of interwoven accounts, at whose chilling core resides an act of creation both audacious and profoundly dreadful. Victor Frankenstein, a mind both incandescent and relentlessly fixated, a scholar of natural philosophy at the venerable Ingolstadt University, finds himself utterly consumed by an unholy yearning to unravel the very fabric of existence, to pierce the veiled mysteries of both celestial and terrestrial realms. Disdaining the confines of established wisdom, he embarks upon a perilous quest for the fundamental essence of life itself. Within the grim confines of charnel houses and the sterile chill of dissection chambers, he meticulously accrues the macabre components for his monumental endeavour. Mortal vestiges, meticulously conjoined, coalesce into a nascent entity, a colossal, grotesque mosaic of humanity. On a desolate November night, the chilling triumph. A jolt of raw, primal energy surges through inert flesh. The inanimate substance begins to writhe. The nascent being's pallid, jaundiced eyes slowly unfurl, and Victor, confronted by his monstrous progeny, recoils in an abyss of profound revulsion. "Beautiful! Great God!" he cries out, a desperate utterance. His sallow epidermis barely concealed the intricate lattice of sinew and vessel pulsating beneath. A cascade of lustrous raven hair framed his visage, and his teeth gleamed with an unnatural, pearlescent brilliance. Yet these very embellishments served only to forge a more ghastly dissonance against his rheumy, pallid eyes, which appeared almost indistinguishable in hue from the stark, bone-white hollows that cradled them. In stark divergence from the vampiric allure of Dracula or the cursed beauty of Dorian Gray, Frankenstein's creation is summarily forsaken from its very inception, expelled by its progenitor, compelled to navigate a hostile existence in a world that recoils in visceral horror from its very visage. Through the creature's tormented gaze, we are plunged into the abyssal depths of human cruelty, the searing agony of ostracism, and the profound, desperate yearning for communion. We bear witness as he clandestinely cultivates his intellect, observing a humble family, thereby acquiring the intricacies of language, the nuances of emotion, and, ultimately, the chilling truth of his own genesis, unveiled within Victor's clandestine laboratory journals. The creature's profound articulacy stands, perhaps, as the narrative's most profoundly disquieting facet. His malevolence is not a simple act of ruin. Rather, it is a meticulously reasoned discourse on his own acts of annihilation. His animosity transcends mere visceral loathing. He meticulously elucidates the profound wellsprings of his abhorrence. Amidst the stark grandeur of the Alpine glacier, his confrontation with Victor, a desperate plea for a female counterpart, unfolds as a testament to both chilling logic and profound pathos. My malevolence stems directly from my profound wretchedness. Have I not been universally ostracized and reviled by the entirety of humanity? Even you, my progenitor, would rend me asunder and revel in your victory. Bear that truth in mind, and then articulate why I should extend greater compassion to humankind. Victor, at first, consents to fashion a companion for his monstrous progeny, yet, gripped by the terrifying spectre of an emergent race, he annihilates the nascent female form before its completion. The creature's retribution unfolds with chilling precision and horrifying efficacy. This vengeance encompasses the brutal slaying of Victor's youngest sibling, the insidious incrimination of a blameless servant, and the chilling strangulation of his beloved bride, Elizabeth, on the very eve of their union. Overwhelmed by an all-consuming sorrow, Victor is compelled to relentlessly hunt his creation across the farthest reaches of the globe, a fateful odyssey that guides us back to the desolate Arctic, the narrative's genesis. Mary Shelley's seminal work rises far beyond mere Gothic terror, evolving into a profound contemplation of scientific hubris, the dire repercussions of usurping divine prerogative, the indispensable role of affection and belonging in the human psyche, and the devastating force of ostracism. Conceived at the very genesis of the Industrial Revolution, this narrative presciently interrogates humanity's intricate and often perilous entanglement with burgeoning technology and unchecked dominion. The narrative culminates as it commenced, amidst the unforgiving ice, with Victor's demise upon Walton's vessel, and the creature's spectral emergence to lament his departed maker. Within his ultimate soliloquy, the creature solemnly pledges to construct his own funereal pyre, thereby extinguishing his aberrant existence, bequeathing to us a haunting tableau of self-cremation against the boundless, frozen expanse. A tormented entity, yearning for ultimate liberation from the crushing weight of its own being. For 2 centuries, Frankenstein's creation has permeated our collective consciousness, often erroneously identified with Frankenstein himself, a pervasive misconception that perhaps underscores the indissoluble nexus between the architect and his artifact, between Victor and his unnamed Adam. He endures as literature's most articulate abomination, an entity whose very essence, the true horror, resides not within his physical form but in the profound desolation of his forsaken state, from which his brutality emanates not from an intrinsic malevolence, but rather from the stark void where affection should have been. Yet, beyond the corporeal horrors, let us transcend the realm of mere flesh and blood monstrosities. Our gaze now shifts to the ethereal spectres that relentlessly besiege the inner sanctums of the psyche. Edgar Allan Poe, that unparalleled architect of the chilling and the grotesque, bequeathed to us a multitude of such phantoms, yet none proved more enduringly iconic than the obsidian avian entity that commenced its rhythmic, ominous tapping upon a chamber's threshold. It was a desolate December midnight. The raven transcends the simple definition of a poem. It stands as not merely verse, but an intricate architectural edifice of escalating terror, a veritable cathedral consecrated to sorrow and the encroaching shadows of lunacy, meticulously forged, word by deliberate word. Let us delve into its haunting tableau. A night profoundly steeped in midnight's gloom. A scholar, burdened by weariness, ensconced amidst the forgotten tomes of ancient lore, desperately seeking solace and diversion from the tormenting spectres of his departed Lenore. Thus, the pervasive, melancholic atmosphere is meticulously woven. With chilling exactitude, the dying embers cast spectral shadows across the floor, the silken, sorrowful, unsettling rustling of the violet draperies. A palpable darkness, almost corporeal in its presence. Then, a faint tapping commences, subtle at its inception, escalating into a more persistent cadence. The scholar, already disquieted, endeavors a rational explanation, perchance a late caller, or perhaps the capricious wind. Yet, as he unlatches his door to confront the profound void beyond, and naught else, we perceive the initial icy tendrils of an otherworldly dread creeping along our very spines. The persistent tapping resumes, now emanating from his window pane. Upon unlatching it, a majestic raven glides inward, alighting upon the sculpted effigy of Pallas Athena, the revered goddess of sagacity. A profoundly ironic perch for a creature destined to propel the scholar towards the precipice of utter derangement. The enigmatic bird utters but one solitary utterance: nevermore. What ensues is a profound psychological descent, meticulously chronicled across 18 flawless stanzas. The academic spirit traverses a harrowing spectrum, from initial amusement to gnawing curiosity, from fleeting hope to profound despair, from the precipice of reason to the abyss of encroaching lunacy. He poses queries to the enigmatic avian, fully cognizant that its sole utterance remains immutable, thereby inflicting upon himself the exquisite agony of validating his most dreadful premonitions. He implores, "Is there solace in Gilead?" A desperate plea for spiritual reassurance. The shadowy raven intones, "Nevermore. Shall he embrace a hallowed maiden, whom celestial beings christened Lenore within the ethereal realms? Nevermore. Is it possible to erase from memory his departed beloved? Nevermore." The poem's climactic tableau crystallizes into an emblem of perpetual anguish. The ominous raven remains, perpetually perched, unyielding in its vigil, upon the pallid bust of Pallas, its eyes possessing the chilling semblance of a demon's gaze, one that appears to be lost in a spectral reverie, whilst the scholar's very soul, ensnared within the avian's oppressive shadow, is destined to remain unlifted nevermore. First unveiled to the world in 1845, The Raven catapulted Poe to immediate renown. Its mesmerizing rhythmic cadence, coupled with its masterful internal, its haunting cadences, its escalating dread, and its profound, unflinching dissection of sorrow's ruinous dominion, struck a chilling chord within the Victorian psyche. A populace already morbidly preoccupied with the solemn rites of bereavement and the sombre aesthetics of mortality. Yet, the true essence elevating The Raven to a pinnacle of macabre literature stems not solely from its spectral visitant, but from its piercing psychological penetration. The profound terror, it is revealed, resides not within the avian entity itself, but in the scholar's tormented psyche, imbuing it with dreadful significance. The ominous raven thus transmutes into a dark speculum, reflecting the depths of his own inconsolable anguish, his profound dread of an eternal severance from his departed, lost beloved. Is this creature a spectral emissary from the spectral realm, a chilling manifestation of the scholar's shattered consciousness, or a veritable fiend dispatched to torment his soul? Poe, with masterful intent, leaves these profound inquiries deliberately unresolved, keenly aware that such ambiguity only amplifies the pervasive terror. What remains unequivocally clear is that The Raven functions as both the grim instigator and silent observer of a psyche's slow, agonizing disintegration beneath the crushing weight of bereavement. Through this narrative, Poe masterfully encapsulated a universal truth regarding grief's insidious power, its capacity to warp perception, to compel us to discern profound meaning in mere happenstance, and to transmute mundane artifacts into conduits of otherworldly import. The chilling refrain of Nevermore from The Raven reverberates through the annals of literary history, not for revealing novel insights into death's ultimate finality, but for articulating that grim truth with an unnerving immediacy that renders it perpetually, terrifyingly present. The poem's persistent potency emanates from the seamless fusion of its auditory resonance and intellectual depth, an exquisite intertwining of structure and substance. The trochaic octameter, with its relentless rhythm, hauntingly echoes the solemn cadence of a funereal dirge. The chilling refrain, Nevermore, descends with the grim finality of a sepulchral slab sealing a crypt. Even the assonance of its expansive vowels conjures a lamenting melody, an ethereal resonance that persists within the listener's consciousness long after the final word has faded. Within the shadowed verses of The Raven, Poe masterfully realized the profound ambition that beckons every artisan of the Gothic. He compelled his audience to experience the spectral caress of the uncanny upon their very skin, the ominous sweep of unseen wings, casting their pall across the deepest recesses of their spirits. He unveiled the chilling truth that the most profound and terrifying visitations often manifest within the labyrinthine confines of our own psyches, where sorrow, culpability, and yearning perch like ravenous spectres, uttering their dreadful pronouncements in an unyielding chorus. Jekyll and Hyde, the primal, untamed beast lurking within the human soul. Amidst the spectral, fog-enshrouded thoroughfares of London, a diminutive figure, his countenance etched with malevolence and his form possessing a strangely primeval, troglodytic aspect, perpetrates an act of chilling, unprovoked brutality. His heinous deed? He cruelly crushes a child beneath his heel, proceeding onward with an unnerving indifference, never once casting a glance behind him. Subsequently, this identical entity, known as Edward Hyde, savagely bludgeons an aged gentleman to his demise with a formidable walking stick, then dissolves into the impenetrable shroud of the London night. Does malevolence possess a discernible visage? Can the abyss itself be bestowed with a nomenclature? These savage transgressions constitute the very abyssal core of Robert Louis Stevenson's profound inquiry into the inherent duality of the human condition. Strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yet, our narrative commences not with the enigmatic figures of Jekyll or Hyde, but through the discerning eyes of the esteemed solicitor, Mr. Utterson. He discerns a peculiar anomaly, does he not? Specifically, the remarkably unusual last testament of his esteemed confidant, the distinguished physician, Henry Jekyll. What, precisely, are the provisions enshrined within this perplexing document? It dictates that, in the event of Jekyll's vanishing or demise, his entire estate shall be bequeathed to an individual named Edward Hyde, a personage utterly unknown to Utterson until this revelation. A peculiar enigma, would you not concur? What arcane bond could possibly unite the venerable physician with this shadowy, malevolent figure? Herein commences a labyrinthine mystery, one that meticulously strips away the polished facade of Victorian decorum, exposing the primal, festering urges lurking beneath. Does this profound internal schism echo within your own consciousness? The ceaseless war waged between our nobler aspirations and our baser instincts, a timeless struggle inherent to the human condition. Stevenson's profound brilliance manifests in the deliberate, creeping unveiling of his foundational, unsettling premise. While contemporary readers approach the narrative already privy to the chilling truth of Jekyll and Hyde's singular identity, the initial Victorian audience experienced the tale as an authentic, unfolding enigma, the ultimate revelation held in suspense. This narrative architecture subtly echoes Jekyll's own desperate compartmentalization of his shadow self, a malevolent essence long concealed, vehemently disavowed, yet inexorably surging towards an uncontrollable eruption. Let us now delve into the stark physical delineations ascribed to these two disparate manifestations of a singular human vessel. Jekyll, a figure of striking handsomeness and impeccable bearing, exuded every hallmark of intellect and benevolence, embodying the quintessential paragon of Victorian achievement and unblemished moral rectitude. Hyde, conversely, presented a pallid, stunted form, conveying an unsettling impression of inherent deformity, yet devoid of any discernible, nameable physical aberration. Eyewitnesses recounted an immediate, visceral revulsion in his proximity, as though perceiving the palpable malevolence that emanated from his very being. Have you ever encountered an individual whose mere presence instilled within you an unbidden, inexplicable sense of profound dread? Whose very aura seemed to draw the warmth from the surrounding atmosphere, leaving an icy void? Through his infamous alchemical concoction, Jekyll harbored the audacious belief that he had finally resolved the ancient dilemma of humanity's inherent duality, cleaving his nobler and baser selves into discrete, autonomous entities. Humanity is not genuinely singular, but profoundly bifurcated, he penned in his ultimate harrowing confession. I posit too, for the current scope of my understanding extends no further than that profound bifurcation. What commences as a daring foray into moral philosophy inexorably transmutes into an insidious, consuming addiction, does it not? Jekyll discovers himself inexorably drawn, with ever-increasing intensity, to the intoxicating, unbridled liberty embodied by Hyde, a liberation from the shackles of societal constraint, from the burden of ethical consideration, from the very spectre of consequence, the esteemed physician by day, the unleashed, primal monstrosity by night. Which soul among us has not, at some juncture, succumbed to such an insidious allure? The primal urge to shed all inhibition, to surrender to our most shadowed desires, yet this metamorphosis inexorably intensifies. Its dominion becomes progressively unmanageable. With every emergence, Hyde's power burgeons, while Jekyll's essence wanes. Ultimately, this dreadful transmogrification commences without conscious volition, as Jekyll awakens to discover himself irrevocably altered into Hyde, even without the alchemical draught. The demarcation between these dual identities, once perceived as inviolable, dissolves into a permeable and precarious state. Can one truly fathom such an abomination? To drift into slumber as one's true self, only to reawaken as an alien entity? To witness the erosion of one's fundamental selfhood utterly beyond reclamation? At the narrative's harrowing zenith, Jekyll's devoted manservant shatters the laboratory's sealed portal, only to confront what unspeakable revelation. The convulsing form of Hyde, draped in garments grotesquely oversized for his diminished stature, Jekyll's own attire. The final desperate missive lays bare the entirety of the grim truth. Jekyll, having failed to acquire the esoteric salt essential for his transformative elixir, discovered himself irrevocably ensnared within Hyde's monstrous guise. Preferring self-annihilation to confronting the gallows as the murderous Hyde, he chose to extinguish his own existence. Unveiled in 1886, Stevenson's chilling novella emerged during an epoch when Victorian sensibilities grappled profoundly with the spectres of degeneration, atavistic regression, and the nascent field of criminal psychology. Through the archetypes of Jekyll and Hyde, Stevenson masterfully transmuted into fictional narrative the burgeoning theories of figures such as Cesare Lombroso, who posited that criminal deviance manifested as evolutionary atavism, discernible through distinct physical markers. Nevertheless, the novel's resonance far surpasses its temporal origins, addressing profound, universal human apprehensions concerning the dismemberment of selfhood, the inherent friction between one's public facade and the clandestine stirrings of private yearning, the pervasive dread that beneath our meticulously constructed civilized veneers something primeval and perilous perpetually slumbers. These appellations transcend mere character designations, having permeated our collective lexicon as an enduring shorthand for the inherent duality residing within every human soul. The narrative's atmospheric milieu, a London shrouded in swirling mists, where gas lamps cast an ambiguous glow, and respectable facades cunningly mask squalid, labyrinthine backstreets functions as the quintessential externalization of its profound psychological disquiet. The urban sprawl itself transmutes into a stark embodiment of the fractured psyche, with Soho, the clandestine haunt of Hyde, serving as the primal id, starkly juxtaposed against the superego embodied by London's more decorous districts. The most unsettling revelation, perhaps, lies in the profound implication that Hyde, far from being an alien intrusion within Jekyll's being, embodies an intrinsic, fundamental aspect of his very essence. He is the manifestation of desires rigorously suppressed yet never truly expunged, impulses vehemently denied but never utterly vanquished. As Jekyll himself conceded, the very fabric of human existence is an intricate commingling of light and shadow, of virtue and vice. His ultimate, catastrophic misjudgment lay not in the dawning recognition of this profound duality, but in the hubristic conviction that he could surgically excise these interwoven facets of his own being, believing such an act would be devoid of dire repercussions. Gaze into the reflective surface this very night. What visage gazes back from the depths? And what other, more sinister countenance might lie dormant behind those accustomed eyes, patiently awaiting its moment of dreadful emergence? This chilling introspection echoes the very essence of the fall of the House of Usher, a narrative steeped in the inexorable decay of both intellect and corporeal form. Throughout the entirety of a sombre, tenebrous, and utterly silent autumnal day, beneath a sky where clouds hung with an almost palpable oppression, have you ever encountered prose that seems to weigh upon the very marrow of your being, conjuring an atmosphere so dense it feels almost tangible? Thus commences Edgar Allan Poe's seminal work of pervasive dread, The Fall of the House of Usher. From its inaugural sentence, the narrative immediately conjures an ambiance of profound, inescapable foreboding, a pervasive sensation that one is crossing the threshold into a domain where the established tenets of natural order and rationality itself has commenced its unraveling. Our anonymous chronicler draws near the ancestral dwelling of the Usher line. How does he articulate its presence? As an archaic familial edifice steeped in an oppressive, unbearable gloom, disseminating an equally profound and unendurable sorrow that settles upon him, akin to a virulent contagion. What compels his journey to this ominous locale? It is the fervent plea of his boyhood companion, Roderick Usher, afflicted by a profound nervous malady that has diminished him to a condition of extreme sensory acuteness and perpetual dread. The very edifice, can you envision its spectral form? A facade pierced by vacant eye-like apertures, its ancient stonework marred by fungi that proliferate like distended veins beneath pallid epidermis, and a barely discernible fissure tracing an ominous path from its apex to its very foundation. This insidious cleavage, initially disregarded as a mere architectural idiosyncrasy, gradually reveals itself as the corporeal manifestation of the lineage's inherent degeneration, an architectural testament to a bloodline inexorably approaching its final, desolate terminus. Who, then, inhabits these crumbling ramparts? The ultimate scions of the Usher dynasty, Roderick and his twin sister, Madeline. Both are tormented by enigmatic afflictions. He, by a morbid hyperacuity of the senses, rendering mundane stimuli agonizing. She, by a debilitating, wasting, cataleptic affliction that periodically renders her body rigid and seemingly lifeless. They stand, in essence, as the corporeal analogues of their ancestral edifice, ancient, profoundly fragile, and poised precariously upon the precipice of ultimate dissolution. Has a particular locale ever permeated the very fabric of your cognition, influencing your temperament, and even your grasp on sanity? The oppressive aura of the Usher mansion inexorably begins to exert its insidious influence upon the narrator, who soon discovers he found himself inexorably drawn into the chilling embrace of Rodri's macabre aesthetic. Their studies delved into esoteric and unsettling ancient texts. Rodri, with an unsettling genius, conjures melodies of an ethereal, almost spectral nature. Their artistic endeavors were profoundly peculiar, seemingly crafted to invoke and channel rather than to merely alleviate the encroaching delirium that consumed their hosts. Rodri's canvases were said to emanate an unbearable, profound sense of dread-filled wonder, while his spontaneously composed dirges held within them an intrinsic, chilling comprehension of sound's potent ability to disquiet the very core of the human psyche. It is at this juncture that the narrative pivots, ushering in a truly momentous occurrence. Meline's apparent demise precipitates Roderick's chilling insistence upon her temporary interment within the mansion's confines, rather than consigning her remains to the cold embrace of the earth. The two figures bore her casket into a subterranean, copper-lined crypt nestled deep within the mansion's foundations. The narrator, increasingly disquieted, observed Meline's remarkably lifelike visage, the faint blush still lingering upon her cheeks and lips. Is it conceivable that the departed might, at times, manifest an illusion of vitality? Or, conversely, could the living occasionally present the chilling semblance of death? With each passing day, Rodri's already fragile mental state plunged into deeper abysses of deterioration. Amidst a night of profound atmospheric upheaval, marked by a swirling vortex and an inexplicable luminescence emanating from the estate grounds, the narrator endeavored to assuage his companion's torment by reciting passages from an antiquated tale of romance. What chilling revelation then unfolds? In a breathtaking crescendo of sublime Gothic terror, the spectral sounds recounted within the narrative began to find their chilling counterparts in genuine auditory phenomena. Emanating from the very fabric of the house itself, the ominous creak of timbers, the sharp crack of unseen forces, and an unsettling, indistinct moaning. The narrative's zenith culminates in a chilling synchronicity, as the narrator's voice recounts the violent breach of a formidable door. Within the unfolding drama, what spectral vision is unveiled as the chamber's portal creaks open? Madeline Usher, her form grotesquely stained with crimson, emerging from her desperate struggle within the sepulchre, still enshrouded in gravecloth, she topples onto her sibling, and in that ghastly embrace, both succumb to death. Her demise wrought by utter depletion, his by an overwhelming mortal dread. The chronicler makes his desperate escape as the very edifice commences its agonizing dissolution, the ominous chasm expanding relentlessly until the entire structure implodes into the abyssal tarn beneath, obliterating all vestiges of the venerable House of Usher. Unveiled in the year 1839, the fall of the House of Usher stands as a testament to Edgar Allan Poe's unparalleled mastery of his craft. This narrative perfectly embodies his doctrine of singular effect, wherein each constituent part, be it the evocative setting, the tormented characters, the unfolding incidents, or even the very architecture of its prose, converges to forge an overarching ambiance of profound dread and inexorable deterioration. What singular quality elevates this particular narrative within the annals of Gothic literature? Does the very dwelling possess a conscious awareness, a spectral sentience? Is there an arcane preternatural bond intertwining the stone edifice with its tormented occupants? Is Roderick's mind unhinged? Or does he, perhaps, harbor a terrifying lucidity regarding forces that transcend ordinary human apprehension? Was Madeline consigned to a premature interment, a living burial, owing to her brother's grievous misjudgment? Or did this horrific deed spring from a subconsciously orchestrated design, born of the aberrant, incestuous affections shared between the twin siblings? Poe deliberately abstains from furnishing definitive answers to these profound inquiries, recognizing that the very essence of unresolved ambiguity serves as an exceptionally potent instrument of psychological terror. Furthermore, the narrative unveils a concept Poe termed the sentience of all vegetable things, a notion both ancient and unsettling. This disquieting proposition suggests that seemingly inert objects could harbor a nascent form of awareness, and that architectural structures themselves might absorb and eerily mirror the profound psychological turmoil of those who dwell within their confines. Have you ever perceived that a particular locale retained an indelible memory of the events transpired within its bounds, within its very confines? That a dwelling might transcend its mere composition of stone and timber? Through the dual entity of the House of Usher, both the lineage and the edifice, Poe meticulously dissects themes of hereditary degeneration, the symbiotic decay of mind and body, the gossamer veil separating existence from oblivion, and the formidable capacity of a morbid imagination to conjure its deepest terrors into tangible reality. He bequeaths to us not simply a spectral narrative, but an intricate, self-referential, symbolic cosmology, where each constituent part mirrors and amplifies the others, thereby forging a hermetically sealed cosmos of unremitting dread, from which the sole egress is utter, absolute annihilation. The enduring resonance of the fall of the House of Usher emanates from its seamless intertwining of psychological torment and spectral dread. It posits that the most profound terrors are those which dissolve the very boundaries between an external menace and an internal apprehension, mirroring the decay of a physical structure with the unraveling of sanity. Tonight, lend an ear to the silence. Do the faint echoes within your dwelling truly signify merely the creaking of ancient timbers? Or could a more sinister presence stir, one that resonates with the disquiet of your own psyche? The Phantom of the Opera, a symphony of shadows. Beneath the resplendent chandeliers and the gilded grandeur of the Paris Opera House, far beneath the oblivious steps of its elegant patrons and costumed performers, another realm lies concealed. Have you ever contemplated the unseen depths beneath the foundations of such magnificent edifices? What ancient secrets might slumber, shrouded in perpetual gloom? A subterranean labyrinth of winding passages, chambers hewn from solid rock, an eerie subterranean lake where, as chronicled by Gaston Leroux, resides a being of both unparalleled genius and profound monstrosity. This is the world of the Phantom of the Opera, a narrative first unveiled in 1910, yet meticulously set amidst the twilight years of the 19th century. Leroux's seminal work commences as a meticulous inquiry. Unsettling phenomena begin to afflict the hallowed halls of the opera house. What unspeakable terrors manifest within those ornate confines? A colossal chandelier plummets without warning, inexplicably crashing into the unsuspecting audience below. A stagehand is discovered, tragically suspended by the neck. Performers recount fleeting visions of a gaunt spectral figure, clad in formal evening attire. Management receives cryptic missives, imperiously demanding that Box 5 remain vacant, and that a nascent soprano, Christine Daae, be granted principal roles. From whence do these imperious directives originate? Who observes from the deepest recesses of the shadows? The very essence of this narrative resides in three souls, inextricably linked by the twin forces of music and consuming obsession. Christine Daae, a Swedish soprano of prodigious talent yet modest origins. Raoul, Vicomte de Chagny, her childhood confidant and aristocratic admirer, and the enigmatic entity known variously as the Phantom, the Opera Ghost, or by his true, haunting appellation, Eric. Christine is convinced her vocal prowess is nurtured by the fabled Angel of Music, a celestial patron her deceased father vowed to dispatch. Yet, who truly whispers to her from beyond the confines of her dressing-room walls, meticulously honing both her voice and her burgeoning psychological thraldom? When this unseen mentor at last manifests physically, drawing her into his abyssal subterranean domain, she is confronted with a horrifying revelation. Her celestial guide, she learns, is merely a man, But what kind of man? One whose visage is so grotesquely marred that he is compelled to don a mask, lest his appearance prove unbearable to the human gaze. Have you ever harbored affection for a being whose very countenance you found impossible to endure, or been irresistibly drawn to gaze upon that which filled you with profound dread? The subterranean dwelling of Erik serves as an eloquent testament to the very essence of its enigmatic occupant. This Gothic edifice, in its very structure, mirrors the tormented psyche of its proprietor. What dark secrets, what macabre wonders lie concealed within its depths? Among its chambers, a resplendent bedroom, meticulously fashioned in the style of a Persian palace, awaits Christine. Adjacent, a meticulously crafted torture chamber, conceived not merely to inflict pain, but to unravel the very sanity of its unfortunate captives. Yet, perhaps most unsettling of all, stands a lifelike mannequin, an eerie simulacrum of Christine herself, draped in the pristine white of a bridal gown. This spectral domain serves as both a hallowed sanctuary and an inescapable prison, a haven for artistic genius and the confines of a deranged mind. Then, with the sudden, jarring force of a cataclysm, the novel's most iconic moment descends upon the narrative. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Christine dares to lift Erik's concealing mask, exposing a visage of unimaginable horror. A countenance likened to a skeletal death's head, featuring deeply sunken eyes, a gaping void where a nose should be, and lips resembling putrefying flesh. This pivotal unveiling, a quintessential Gothic motif, irrevocably transmutes the phantom from an enigmatic guide into a relentless, obsessive tormentor. As his unrequited devotion for Christine curdles into a possessive fury, Leroux masterfully taps into millennia of folklore concerning malformed entities inhabiting the Earth's hidden recesses. From the labyrinthine myths of the Minotaur to the shadowed medieval chronicles of reclusive bell-ringers, Erik emerges as a potent embodiment of humanity's primal dread of the unseen, the monstrous lurking beneath the veneer of civilization. Nevertheless, within this monstrous facade, Leroux imbues his creation with an astonishing depth of human pathos. Erik's prodigious talents as a composer, architect, and ventriloquist are rivaled solely by the profound solitude that afflicts him and his desperate yearning for genuine human communion. The narrative inexorably hurtles towards its harrowing climax when Erik, in a brazen act, abducts Christine directly from the stage amidst a performance of Faust. Raoul and A. The enigmatic Persian, a spectral figure from Erik's shadowed past, ventures into the labyrinthine depths to effect her rescue, only to find himself ensnared within the very torture chamber. Concurrently, Erik confronts Christine with a chilling ultimatum: accept his hand in marriage and survive, or reject him and condemn both the Persian and hundreds of opera attendees to a fiery demise via a meticulously orchestrated detonation. What agonizing decision would one render when confronted with such a dreadful dichotomy of choices? Within the novel's harrowing denouement, Christine extends to Erik a profound empathy, utterly alien to his existence. She not only consents to remain by his side, but bestows a tender kiss upon his disfigured brow. This singular gesture of grace, embracing rather than recoiling from his grotesque visage, shatters a fundamental barrier within the spectral entity. He liberates her, alongside Raoul and the Persian, embracing a path of atonement through self-abnegation, rather than clinging to dominion through coercion. Leroux's intricate narrative unfolds across myriad dimensions. A chilling enigma, a poignant romance, an allegorical testament to art's alchemical potency, and a profound inquiry into humanity's capacity to forge its own monstrous shadows through societal ostracism and profound solitude. Erik embodies a paradox, simultaneously antagonist and casualty, his malevolence directly born from the relentless brutality inflicted upon him since his very inception, a consequence of his abhorrent physiognomy. The Phantom's demise is not a theatrical spectacle upon the boards, as often depicted in lesser interpretations. Instead, he succumbs in solitary anguish, his spirit extinguished by a shattered heart, his mortal remains unearthed only much later. Leroux's ultimate disclosure, that Erik's corporeal form, vanished from the opera's subterranean catacombs, leaving naught but his spectral mask, intimates that certain phantoms are destined to remain eternally unexorcised. The next occasion you grace the hallowed halls of the opera, cast your gaze upwards towards the vacant loges and downwards into the shadowed abyss of the orchestra pit. Does an unseen presence observe from the encroaching gloom? Do ethereal melodies drift to your ears, seemingly emanating from both the void and the very fabric of existence simultaneously? The spectral inhabitant of the opera house might reside far nearer than your conscious mind dares to conceive. The mill of spectral echoes. Retribution from the ethereal veil. Within the ancient hamlet of Weirbridge, a venerable flour mill looms, derelict and perpetually enshrouded in hushed, unsettling murmurs. What dark tales do the local inhabitants recount concerning its desolate presence? They whisper of its haunting by the restless spectre of Jacob Pinkerton, its erstwhile proprietor, whose lifeless form was discovered submerged in the mill pond under profoundly enigmatic conditions a decade and a half ago. Do you, esteemed auditor, lend credence to the existence of phantoms? To the enduring presence of spirits condemned to perpetual unrest until the scales of cosmic justice are finally balanced? The local populace assiduously shuns the locale once twilight descends. They instinctively make the sign of the cross, a desperate ward against unseen malevolence, whenever their path compels them to traverse its vicinity. Whispers circulate, recounting spectral illuminations glimpsed through its desolate windows and chilling lamentations echoing from within its crumbling edifice. Within this realm of deep-seated superstition, John Lester materializes, a pragmatic man of commerce, now heir to the ancestral property bequeathed by a remote kinsman. How does he perceive these deeply ingrained local apprehensions? He scorns them as mere rustic ignorance, boldly declaring his resolve to revitalize the ancient mill and reinstate its operational grandeur. The local populace implores him to desist from such a perceived desecration, yet Lester, a staunch proponent of scientific advancement and industrial might, derides their anxieties. Has your unwavering conviction in the rational order of the cosmos ever led you to disregard premonitions that, in hindsight, demanded your attention? Nevertheless, even Lester finds himself unable to fully quell an involuntary tremor upon his initial ingress into the mill's vast, echoing interior. Within, the ancient mechanisms lie entombed beneath a pall of cobwebs resembling spectral funeral shrouds. Rodents, unseen but heard, skitter across the decaying timber of the floorboards. The colossal millstone reposes in an eerie silence, cloaked in a thick mantle of dust, while beyond, the wooden water wheel has partially succumbed, plunging into the murky depths beneath. Defying all counsel, Lester resolves to endure a solitary vigil within the mill's confines, intent on disproving the existence of any spectral denizens. Equipped with a firearm, a flickering lamp, and a measure of potent spirits, he establishes his solitary post within the chamber once occupied by Jacob Pinkerton. As the witching hour draws nigh, a nascent uncertainty begins to erode his steadfast skepticism. The desolate wind, whistling through shattered panes, assumes an unsettling resemblance to human lamentations. The flickering illumination from his lamp conjures phantasmagoric shadows that writhe and contort into monstrous visages. The venerable timbers of the mill emit a symphony of groans and creaks, as if burdened by an unseen immense oppression. Precisely as the clock's chimes announce the 12th hour, the authentic spectral manifestation commences. What unspeakable events unfold within that dreadful, cursed hour? The derelict mill wheel, long since decayed and fractured, commences its rotation, seemingly by an unseen autonomous force. The colossal grinding stones, devoid of any sustenance, begin their slow, inexorable revolution. From the ethereal void, a spectral presence coalesces. Jacob Pinkerton, his raiment and hair still sodden with the murky pond's embrace, his visage distended by death and twisted by an infernal fury, his eyes alight with an otherworldly, phosphorescent gleam. Yet, the phantom's condemnatory digit did not fix upon Lester, but rather upon a painted effigy suspended prominently on the chamber wall. This depicted individual, a man of striking countenance, was none other than William Hilliard, Jacob's own nephew and erstwhile associate in commerce. Across a succession of harrowing apparitions, the spectral entity began to unveil the grim reality of its demise. Driven by an insatiable avarice for the prosperous mill, Hilliard had perpetrated a heinous act, rendering Jacob senseless with a brutal blow before consigning him to the watery depths, casting him into the frigid embrace of the mill pond, subsequently fabricating a narrative of an unfortunate, unforeseen demise. Does one ever ponder the chilling possibility that certain accidents are, in truth, the most heinous of premeditated slayings? Or that profound, sinister truths often lie interred, patiently awaiting the hand of a destined revealer? The phantom form of Jacob then guided the quivering Lester towards a clandestine recess, within which lay sequestered the irrefutable evidence of the dark deed. There, nestled within, were Hilliard's own handkerchief, tellingly stained with crimson, and a missive penned by Jacob himself, articulating a profound premonition of his impending doom. The restless spirit, unable to find repose until retribution was exacted, imperatively commanded Lester to pledge an oath to unmask the perpetrator of this vile crime. As the first tendrils of dawn pierced the gloom, Lester emerged from the night, his mind teetering on the precipice of madness from sheer terror. Yet his resolve to honor his sacred vow remained unyielding. Subsequent inquiries brought to light that William Hilliard, having prodigally dissipated his ill-gotten fortune, had since sought refuge in the sprawling metropolis of London, living beneath a fabricated identity. The scales of justice finally balanced when Hilliard, cornered by the undeniable proofs of his transgression, offered a full confession, choosing to end his own existence rather than endure the ignominy of public disgrace and the hangman's noose. Following Hilliard's demise, Lester once more made his way back to the silent, brooding mill. Despite a lingering disquietude, he perceived a profound alteration in the very essence of the place. The suffocating pall of malevolence that had once permeated its stones had dissipated, a transformation coinciding with his efforts to restore and recommence the mill's operations. From that moment forward, no further spectral visitations or uncanny phenomena disturbed its hallowed grounds. The tormented spirit of Jacob Pinkerton, its quest for righteous vengeance fulfilled, had at last attained its long-sought, eternal slumber. This narrative, penned by Mary Elizabeth Braden, stands as a quintessential illustration of numerous archetypal motifs prevalent within the Victorian era's spectral literature. This narrative delves into the concept of restorative justice for the departed, positing that spectral entities linger in our earthly realm, tethered by unresolved earthly affairs, thereby forging an unsettling confluence between empirical reason and the inexplicable supernatural. In stark contrast to preceding Gothic narratives confined to bygone eras or far-flung, exotic locales, the Haunted Mill masterfully transplants dread into a distinctly contemporary English milieu, subtly implying that the truly uncanny does not reside within ancient, secluded fortresses, but rather insidiously permeates the very fabric of our commonplace, industrial countryside. The very structure of the mill emerges as a profound emblem. A crucible where raw grain is relentlessly pulverized between colossal stones, where the elemental force of water is subjugated to human ambition, and where nature's essence is transmuted through the relentless grind of machinery. Now derelict and forsaken, it stands as a stark testament to industrial ambition corrupted, a chilling monument to technological advancement devoid of human empathy, and the insidious perversion of progress by insatiable avarice. The spectral entity's malevolent orchestration of the mill's intricate mechanisms powerfully underscores this pervasive theme, transforming the very tools of human ingenuity and advancement into terrifying conduits of otherworldly vengeance. The next occasion you find yourself traversing the desolate periphery of a forgotten edifice, lend your senses to the subtle echoes emanating from its decaying interior. Are these faint stirrings merely the mournful sigh of the wind, or the creaking lament of ancient, settling timbers? Or could it be the spectral whisper of something more profound, an entity patiently awaiting its due recompense, a restless spirit unable to find repose until its harrowing narrative is finally unveiled? Carilla, The Vampire's Embrace. A quarter-century prior to Bram Stoker's seminal unveiling of Count Dracula to an unsuspecting world, a different, equally formidable, vampiric presence already prowled the shadowed pages of Gothic literary tradition. a being whose intoxicating allure and profoundly transgressive essence persist in captivating the imaginations of generations of readers. Do you, perchance, recall her name? Carmela. Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmela, first unveiled in 1872, not only codified numerous foundational tropes of vampiric lore, but audaciously ventured into the exploration of illicit desires, subjects that Victorian sensibilities vehemently sought to suppress and consign to silence. Our chilling narrative commences its unfolding within Stria, a secluded and enigmatic province nestled deep within the Austrian landscape, where the youthful Laura resides alongside her father within the crumbling grandeur of an ancient, somewhat decaying castle. In her profound isolation and pervasive solitude, Laura's memory drifts back to a peculiar and unsettling incident from her tender years. What spectral apparition dared to intrude upon and disrupt her innocent, youthful slumber? She awoke abruptly to behold a strikingly beautiful young woman kneeling intimately beside her bed, only for this ethereal figure to then seemingly dissolve into the very floorboards beneath her. This visitation, seemingly a dream, leaves Laura with a sensation of pleasant pain and marks the beginning of a connection that will define her life. Years later, a carriage accident near their castle brings an unexpected guest into Laura's secluded existence. A mysterious countess travelling with her daughter requests temporary shelter for the girl while the mother continues on urgent business. The daughter's name, Carmela, a languid, beautiful young woman who immediately strikes Laura as familiar, though neither acknowledges previous acquaintance. Have you ever met someone new yet felt you'd known them forever? Felt an immediate, inexplicable connection that defied rational explanation? From the moment of Carmela's arrival, strange occurrences multiply. Laura experiences bizarre dreams, in which she feels something like a cat enter her room and a sensation of being caressed, followed by sudden sharp pain. She grows weaker by the day, experiencing lang, strange dreams, and a sense of latitude and fever. Meanwhile, reports circulate of a mysterious illness affecting young women in the surrounding area, with victims reporting nightmares of nocturnal visitations before wasting away. Carmela's behavior. She speaks to Laura in language more suited to a lover than a friend. You are mine. You shall be mine, and you and I are one forever. She sleeps late into the day, never joins in prayer, and appears physically disturbed by funeral processions. Despite these alarming signs, Laura feels drawn to her enigmatic guest, experiencing confusion about her intense feelings that modern readers recognize as sexual awakening. The truth emerges gradually through the investigations of General Spieldorf, whose niece died under similar circumstances. His research leads to the revelation that Carmela is actually Countess Mircalla Karnstein, a vampire who has existed for centuries by periodically reanimating her corpse and preying on young women. Her name, Carmela, is merely an anagram of her original name, a linguistic disguise she employs in each new location. In the novel's climactic sequence, Carmela's tomb is located in the ruins of the Geesten chapel. Following traditional vampire lore, her undead body is found immersed in blood, with the sharp teeth of the vampire projecting against the lip. The assembled men execute the ritualistic annihilation, impaling her heart, severing her head, and consigning her remnants to the flames, a desperate act believed to liberate her tormented spirit and safeguard those yet to fall prey. Laura, despite her deliverance, finds her psyche irrevocably scarred by the spectral encounter with the vampiric entity. The narrative concludes with her somber, introspective musings, a testament to enduring sorrow. Even now, the spectral visage of Carmela persistently invades the chambers of recollection. Manuscript. An untried young governess, her identity forever veiled, accepts a post at Bly, a secluded country estate, tasked with the care of 2 orphan children, Flora, aged 8, and Miles, aged 10. Their uncle and guardian, an affluent London bachelor, imposes an extraordinary stipulation. She is to resolve all difficulties independently, never disturbing him under any conceivable circumstance. Notwithstanding this ominous warning, the governess, somewhat captivated by her attractive employer, readily assents to the terms. Have you too ever disregarded portents of peril, driven by an overwhelming desire? At first, the estate of Bly appears to be an idyllic haven. The children are exquisitely beautiful, utterly charming, and seemingly flawless in every conceivable aspect. Mrs. Gross, the venerable housekeeper, embodied a comforting warmth and offered unwavering support. The governess initially perceived her new domain as an idyllic sanctuary, until a twilight stroll across the sprawling estate revealed a solitary figure observing her from the apex of a distant tower. A profound, unbidden terror seized her soul, born from the unsettling intensity of his silent, distant gaze. Subsequently, the spectral presence manifested once more, its eyes fixed upon her from beyond a window pane. Upon her recounting, Mrs. Gross chillingly identified the spectre as Peter Quint, the estate's former valet, a figure whose past was stained by an illicit liaison with the preceding governess, Miss Jessel, and whose gaze had lingered with unsettling intensity upon the young Miles. The chilling truth then unfurled. Both Quint and Miss Jessel had long since departed the mortal coil. A terrifying conviction took root within the governess. The spectral forms of these tainted servants had re-emerged from the beyond, their malevolent purpose to ensnare the innocent children. Soon, the ethereal manifestation of Miss Jessel herself began to appear, often observed in silent repose beside the shimmering lake, or, with equal disquiet, standing within the confines of a desolate classroom. Yet, a more profound disquiet gnawed at her, the chilling suspicion that the children not only perceived these phantoms but engaged in silent communion with them. Despite this, Flora and Miles steadfastly maintained their innocence, never once acknowledging the presence of any spectral anomaly. In such a realm, can one truly place faith in the veracity of one's own perceptions? Or, conversely, can credence be given to the fervent denials of those who profess blindness to the unseen? Henry James masterfully wove a narrative tapestry, a relentless descent into the abyss of psychological ambiguity. The governess's interpretations of reality grew progressively more fervent, bordering on the hallucinatory. Each seemingly innocuous utterance from the children now resonated with a chilling, insidious subtext. Their impeccable demeanor, once a mark of virtue, transformed in her perception into undeniable proof of an unnatural, malevolent dominion. Miles's enigmatic expulsion from his academy, shrouded in an impenetrable veil of silence, solidified in her mind as irrefutable evidence of a profound and terrible corruption. The narrative's harrowing crescendo is reached when the governess, driven to the precipice of her sanity, directly challenges Flora concerning the spectral presence of Miss Jessel, which she insists hovers across the shimmering expanse of the lake. Yet the child's eyes perceive naught but emptiness, plunging her into a paroxysm of terror and despair. Imploring Mrs. Groves to liberate her from the governess's oppressive presence. A feverish affliction, claims Flora, necessitating her removal to London, thus isolating the governess with Miles in the desolate estate. Within the climactic, harrowing tableau, the governess relentlessly compels Miles to divulge his clandestine communion with the spectral entities. In that very instant, a chilling apparition, Peter Quint's visage, manifests at the window pane. She enfolds Miles in a desperate, protective embrace, vehemently insisting he acknowledge the spectral intrusion. The child's voice, finally breaking, utters a single haunting query. Is she present? This, the governess interprets as a reference to Miss Jessel, yet she vehemently corrects him, asserting it is not Jessel, but the craven, malevolent spectre of Quint. Miles, with a final desperate gasp, utters the valet's name. A fleeting sense of triumph washes over the governess, convinced she has vanquished the spectral adversary. Yet, as her protective hold slackens, she discovers Miles's lifeless form cradled within her embrace. What sinister force precipitated Miles's demise? Was it the spectral entity's inherent malevolence? The governess's own frenzied protective fervour? Or the sheer overwhelming power of terror itself? Henry James masterfully ensnares the reader in an enduring state of chilling ambiguity. The profound genius of James's novella resides in its exquisite equilibrium between the spectral and the psychological paradigms of interpretation. Should one accept the governess's narrative without skepticism, the tale unfolds as a quintessential ghost story, wherein malevolent entities endeavour to corrupt and possess innocent young souls. Yet, James meticulously interweaves sufficient ambiguity to sustain an alternative exegesis, that the governess, burdened by sexual repression and an obsessive romantic fixation upon her distant employer, succumbs to hallucinatory episodes born of hysteria, thereby projecting her own profound anxieties onto her vulnerable wards. The narrative fabric itself lends credence to both divergent interpretations. The governess furnishes remarkably precise descriptions of spectral figures, details she ostensibly could not have fabricated, given her complete unfamiliarity with Quint during his mortal existence. Nevertheless, she remains the solitary observer of these phantasmal manifestations, and her unfolding account betrays the gradual unraveling of her own psychological stability. The enigmatic conduct of the children might signify either an insidious supernatural corruption or merely the inherent secretiveness of childhood, tragically misconstrued by an increasingly paranoid and authoritative presence. The circumstances surrounding Miles's demise are shrouded in an enduring enigma. Was his young life extinguished by sheer terror upon encountering the spectral manifestation of Quint? Or did the governess, ensnared within her own fractured reality, inadvertently extinguish his breath? Could it be that his fragile heart simply succumbed, overwhelmed by the relentless psychological torment she unwittingly inflicted? Have you ever possessed an unshakable conviction regarding a truth imperceptible to all others, a reality they could neither discern nor comprehend? To what lengths would you venture to shield another from a peril discernible solely to your own senses? James's The Turn of the Screw fundamentally reshaped the spectral narrative, shifting its locus inward, positing that the most profound and terrifying visitations might originate from the labyrinthine depths of our own psyches. The enduring triumph of James lay in crafting a tale, compelling its audience to grapple with the inherent fallibility of perception itself, a fragility evident in both the governess's fractured viewpoint and their own subjective interpretations. The novella's profound influence transcends the literary realm, permeating the field of psychology, where it has been meticulously scrutinized as a seminal case study in the intricate dynamics of repression, projection, and hysteria. Its indelible imprint upon subsequent tales of the supernatural is immeasurable, solidifying the unreliable narrator as a cornerstone of the genre, and powerfully illustrating how profound ambiguity, rather than overt terror, can conjure the most deeply disquieting effects. Ultimately, The Turn of the Screw persists as it has ever been, an exquisitely engineered mechanism designed to perpetually cultivate disquieting uncertainty. A spectral narrative that assails our peace not through visible phantoms, but through the chilling realization that we can never truly rely upon our perceptions, the narratives presented to us, or even the very foundations of our self-knowledge. The Horla, an unseen, predatory entity. My very essence has been usurped. An alien presence now resides within, having seized dominion over my being. Have you ever experienced the unsettling sensation of not being solitary, even within the confines of an ostensibly vacant chamber? That an unseen entity observed your every move, meticulously scrutinized your existence, patiently awaiting the moment your vigilance might falter? These profoundly disquieting pronouncements, extracted from Guy de Maupassant's The Horla, penned in 1887, encapsulate the very core of a narrative that dissolves the conventional demarcation between supernatural terror and the precipice of psychological collapse, navigating the fraught space between an encroaching external menace and an insidious internal unraveling. Structured as a series of intimate journal entries, The Horla meticulously documents the insidious mental decay of an anonymous protagonist, dwelling within a seemingly tranquil abode, commanding views of the Seine River in Normandy. From a state of serene composure and logical thought, an unsettling cascade of unexplainable perceptions begins to intrude upon his reality. What malevolent force then dared to shatter his tranquility? A spectral presence in the nocturnal hours, an oppressive weight upon his very being, and the chilling certainty of unseen eyes fixed upon him. The insidious manifestations of this unseen tormentor intensified with a chilling, deliberate progression. Upon waking, he discovered his carafe inexplicably emptied of water, yet retained no recollection of having partaken of its contents. Freshly gathered blossoms, arranged within his chamber, withered with unnatural swiftness, as though their very essence had been siphoned by an invisible vampiric entity. The very leaves of his tome would inexplicably turn, devoid of any mortal touch. While each isolated occurrence might, in theory, yield to a logical interpretation, their relentless aggregation forged an inescapable ambience of burgeoning terror. Has one ever grappled with the futile endeavor of rationalizing the utterly unfathomable? To seek empirical origins for phenomena that brazenly scorn the very tenets of logic? A pivotal moment of revelation dawned as the narrator beheld a vessel of Brazilian origin navigating the placid waters of the Seine. An uncanny affinity drew him to this ship, as though it bore a clandestine cargo destined solely for his reception. Subsequently, his trusted attendant divulged accounts of analogous occurrences having previously plagued the distant lands of Brazil. A widespread affliction of mental derangement, ascribed to an unseen entity sustained by the very essence of water and milk. The narrator's conviction solidified. This very entity, which he christened the Hauler, had relentlessly pursued him from the distant shores of South America aboard that fateful vessel, and now it had chosen him as its next tormented quarry. He posited its nature as a superior, more advanced species, an evolutionary heir to the human race, endowed with formidable faculties utterly beyond mortal comprehension. These included an ethereal invisibility, a profound dominion over the human psyche, and the uncanny capacity to traverse solid matter, yet its most chilling attribute lies in its sustenance, drawn not merely from corporeal nourishment, but from the very essence of human volition and self-determination. Within the narrative's most disquieting empirical observations, the protagonist meticulously positions vessels of water and milk adjacent to his sleeping quarters prior to his slumber. By dawn's early light, despite having meticulously sealed his chamber and being absolutely convinced of its inviolability, the volume of the liquids had inexplicably diminished. Subsequently, a desperate endeavor to perceive the unseen entity compels him to strategically array reflective surfaces throughout his private sanctuary. As he confronts his reflection within the polished glass, he is seized by an instant of profound existential dread as his own mirrored image inexplicably dissolves, as though consumed by the unseen presence, which now stands imperceptibly between his corporeal form and the reflective surface. Can one truly fathom such an occurrence? The sheer terror of witnessing one's own visual representation dissolve into nothingness, coupled with the chilling realization that an unseen entity occupies the space between oneself and one's perceived reality. A spectral presence, unseen by mortal eyes, yet possessing the chilling faculty of sight upon you. The journal's pages bear witness to an escalating frenzy, as the chronicler of these events oscillates between embracing the spectral origins of his torment and the gnawing doubt concerning his own mental faculties. He sought counsel from physicians, embarked on journeys in pursuit of solace, even journeying to Mont Saint-Michel to imbibe tales of primeval, unseen entities that were rumored to have held dominion over the terrestrial realm prior to humanity's advent. Yet, no remedy could assuage his profound anguish. Driven to the precipice of despair, he conceived a desperate scheme to ensnare and utterly obliterate the malevolent presence. After enticing it into the confines of his bedchamber, he hermetically sealed the space and ignited his ancestral dwelling in a conflagration, harboring the grim hope of incinerating his spectral persecutor. But, as the inferno devoured his venerable abode, a chilling uncertainty gripped his soul. The Hauler, if it is not truly vanquished, when the corporeal form is annihilated, does not the essence persist? The narrative culminates in the chronicler's somber realization that self-annihilation represents his sole recourse, for the Hauler proves impervious to any physical evasion. Unveiled merely 3 years prior to Maupassant's demise, a consequence of syphilis-induced delirium, the Hauler has frequently been interpreted as a semi-autobiographical chronicle of the author's profound mental decline. Maupassant grappled with vivid hallucinations and pervasive paranoia during his twilight years, mirroring the chronicler's harrowing experiences. The narrative echoes the manifestations of diverse psychoses. However, to confine its terror solely to a clinical diagnosis would be to overlook its profound genius as a work of the supernatural. Akin to the most compelling Gothic narratives, It masterfully sustains an exquisite equipoise between psychological and preternatural interpretations. The entity known as the holler might manifest as a mere figment, a delusion birthed from the narrator's unraveling psyche, or, conversely, it could embody the very dread he harbors, an unseen presence from realms beyond mortal comprehension, a chilling harbinger of humanity's eventual supplantation by an ascendant species. Maupassant penned this tale amidst an epoch of breathtaking scientific acceleration, a time when Darwinian postulates had fundamentally dislodged humanity from its perceived dominion in the cosmic order, and when unseen energies such as electricity, magnetism, and radiation were being subjugated by burgeoning technological prowess. This spectral presence, the holler, mirrors these profound societal anxieties, subtly intimating that mankind's dominion over the terrestrial sphere may prove ephemeral, that the relentless march of evolution persists, and that our own perceived triumphs might remain as utterly inscrutable to us as the intricate tapestry of human consciousness is to the animal kingdom. The narrative's enduring potency stems from its insidious, incremental escalation, a painstaking chronicle of minor disquietudes that inexorably coalesce into an all-consuming, overwhelming dread. Maupassant possessed an acute understanding that authentic horror does not manifest in ostentatious supernatural spectacles, but rather in the insidious, subtle distortions of the mundane. Consider the water levels inexplicably receding overnight, or blossoms withering with unnatural haste, the chilling sensation of an unseen breath caressing your skin when solitude should reign supreme. Have you ever been abruptly roused from slumber in the dead of night, convinced that an unseen presence had intruded upon your repose? A presence that now lingers, observing from the impenetrable shadows just beyond the confines of your bedchamber? At a more profound level, the holler delves into humanity's most primal anxieties concerning the very integrity of the self. The narrator's paramount dread is not the cessation of life, but rather an insidious possession, the slow, inexorable erosion of his autonomy, the complete subjugation of his will by an alien entity. He has usurped my place within my own dwelling, and I find myself utterly powerless to dislodge him, he records in one of his ultimate journal entries, articulating a terror far more abyssal than mere corporeal annihilation. This chilling apprehension of being supplanted, of witnessing one's fundamental identity irrevocably usurped. In this profound thematic resonance, the narrative presages a significant portion of 20th century horror, spanning from invasion narratives such as The Body Snatchers to cinematic portrayals of demonic possession. It serves as a stark reminder that Gothic horror, in its most potent manifestations, confronts not merely spectral menaces, but profound existential quandaries. It evokes not solely the apprehension of physical harm, but a far more unsettling dread. The chilling prospect of what might supplant us, obliterate our very essence, or, most terrifyingly, transmute us into an entity, bereft of any discernible trace of our former selves. May your slumber be undisturbed this night, dear listener. Should you awaken to discover the water vessel beside your sleeping place, mysteriously devoid of its contents, rest assured, a perfectly logical elucidation undoubtedly awaits. The yellow wallpaper, a tapestry of derangement. Scarcely any Gothic literary creations have attained the profound feminist reverberations of Charlotte Perkins Gilman's seminal work, The Yellow Wallpaper, published in 1892. This narrative transmutes the conventional motifs of supernatural terror into a searing indictment of 19th century medical attitudes regarding female maladies and mental derangement. Akin to the holler, Gilman's narrative unfolds as a first-person journal, meticulously documenting the psychological unraveling of an anonymous female protagonist. What then is the nature of her alleged malady? Her husband, John, a man of medicine, pronounces her condition as temporary nervous depression, coupled with a minor hysterical predisposition, and dictates her regimen. This cure mandates an absolute cessation of all labor or intellectual engagement, enforced solitude save for fleeting encounters with John, and strict immurement within an upper-story nursery of a leased summer estate. Have you ever been informed that your perceptions were flawed, that your emotions were simply manifestations requiring control? that external authorities possessed greater insight into the workings of your own consciousness than you yourself? The very chamber transforms into a pivotal entity within the unfolding drama. Its wallpaper, in particular, evoking a growing blend of repulsion and hypnotic allure. Its hue is profoundly repellent, verging on the grotesque. A smouldering, sullied yellow, its vibrancy strangely diminished by the gradual panangivas. Bathed in sunlight, its muted tones are sufficient to disorient the gaze, yet its presence is sufficiently distinct to perpetually vex and compel scrutiny. And as one attempts to trace the faltering, unstable undulations for but a short span, they abruptly self-destruct, plummeting into absurd angles, annihilating their own coherence, amidst unprecedented paradoxes. Prohibited from any form of writing or intellectual pursuit, the narrator finds herself obsessively fixated upon this wallpaper, inadvertently imbuing its surface with her own fractured psychological landscape onto its tumultuous designs. At first, she discerns merely a faint, underlying motif, rendered in a distinct hue, a particularly vexing apparition, visible only under specific illumination, and even then, lacking true clarity. Can you perceive its emergence before your very gaze? This latent design slowly coalesces into the spectral form of a woman, or perhaps a multitude of women, imprisoned behind the wallpaper's dominant pattern of oppressive bars and constricting shapes. A narrator's profound identification with this captive entity intensifies in tandem with her own escalating immurement. Persists. I believe that woman escapes during the day, she records, and I shall reveal my reasoning. In secret, I have observed her. I can discern her from every aperture of my chamber. It is the identical woman, I am certain, for her movements are perpetually a low, furtive crawl, and most females do not traverse by daylight. As her psychological condition further unravels, the narrator commences to perceive these furtive, creeping figures. The insidious pattern, no longer confined to the papered walls, seemed to writhe beyond her casements, slithering along the garden's winding paths. A chilling certainty then began to possess her, that she herself was one of those spectral figures, long ensnared within the pattern's intricate labyrinth, yet now, inexplicably, liberated. Within the narrative's climactic, unsettling crescendo, she immures herself within the chamber, savagely rending most of the wallpaper from its moorings. Then commences a disquieting, circuitous crawl along the room's periphery, her shoulder leaving an ominous smear upon the plaster. This chilling spectacle her husband unearths to his profound dread upon his forceful entry into the sealed sanctuary. I am finally free, she declares, her voice echoing as he collapses, insensate, across her path. Despite your machinations and Jane's complicity, I have torn away the greater part of this oppressive paper, thus ensuring you cannot re-imprison me. What true liberation can be found when the very essence of freedom manifests as an unsettling descent into apparent lunacy? How does one reconcile emancipation when its visage is that of profound psychological disintegration? Gilman's chilling narrative, The Yellow Wallpaper, drew its genesis from her personal ordeal with the infamous rest cure, a regimen prescribed by the renowned neurologist S. Weir Mitchell for her own postpartum melancholia. This draconian therapeutic standard, widely imposed upon nervous women of the late 19th century, rigorously forbade any semblance of intellectual engagement. It mandated an absolute cessation of reading, writing, or any purposeful endeavor, instead prioritizing mere physical repose and sustenance. Gilman subsequently chronicled how this very regimen propelled her to the precipice of complete mental dissolution, asserting that her story was penned as a direct, searing indictment of Mitchell's controversial methodologies. Though not explicitly supernatural in its core, The Yellow Wallpaper masterfully deploys the enduring conventions of Gothic literature to profoundly unsettling effect. Its chosen milieu, an isolated, sprawling mansion imbued with an inexplicable disquiet, unmistakably echoes the spectral abodes prevalent in earlier Gothic narratives. The epistolary, journal-like structure cultivates an identical narrative ambiguity to that found in The Turn of the Screw and The Haunting of Hill House, leaving its audience perpetually questioning whether the narrator confronts authentic spectral manifestations or succumbs to the insidious delusions born of her deteriorating psyche. The wallpaper itself operates as a quintessential Gothic haunting, progressively tightening its insidious grip upon the narrator's fragile mind, appearing to be animated by some malevolent, unseen consciousness. Yet, with profound insight, Gilman masterfully subverts this very trope. The wallpaper, in truth, is not the haunted entity. Rather, it stands as the stark, tangible embodiment of the patriarchal strictures imposed upon female identity and the suppression of authentic expression. The intricate design ensnaring the spectral figure of the creeping woman serves as a potent emblem for the unyielding societal strictures and the oppressive medical dominion that similarly shackle the protagonist's own spirit. With profound subversion, Gilman posits that the very state perceived as derangement might in truth be the genesis of emancipation. The protagonist's ultimate descent into this unsettling, creeping locomotion, while outwardly appearing as utter lunacy, signifies her profound repudiation of the docile, infantilized existence her spouse and physician had meticulously engineered for her. Her escape, a true liberation, was not from the confines of the patterned walls, but from the crushing, asphyxiating strictures of Victorian womanhood itself. Emerging into a world where the political, intellectual, and professional ambitions of women were frequently pathologized as manifestations of hysteria, The Yellow Wallpaper endures as a seminal literary work, offering an unparalleled examination of the intricate interplay between gender, dominion, and the very constructs of mental soundness. Its profound resonance transcends the boundaries of mere Gothic narrative, permeating the realms of feminist literary discourse, the ethical considerations of medicine, and the annals of psychiatric history. Gilman subsequently recounted that a manuscript dispatched to the eminent S. Weir Mitchell so profoundly reshaped his therapeutic approach to nervous prostration that he confessed to his intimates a fundamental shift in his methodology following its perusal. Irrespective of the veracity of this assertion, The Yellow Wallpaper undeniably reshaped the very topography of American Gothic literature, illustrating how its established tropes could be transmuted to unveil the visceral terrors confronting women within a societal framework that systematically pathologized their innate yearnings for self-governance and individual articulation. Gaze upon your surroundings. What unseen patterns circumscribe your intellect? What unseen barriers, imperceptible to the multitude, loom starkly before your own perception? And what profound liberation might be unleashed by rending the very fabric of your confinement to at last emerge? Lovecraft's spectral revenants, born from the chilling science of undeath, though firmly anchored in the nascent 20th century rather than the gaslit Victorian age, H.P. Lovecraft's macabre chronicles of reanimation signify a pivotal metamorphosis within Gothic motifs, forging a terrifying nexus between ancient supernatural lore and contemporary apprehensions concerning unchecked scientific hubris. What cataclysmic synthesis occurs when the primordial dread of the resurrected dead collides with the formidable unbridled might of modern scientific endeavor? Within chilling narratives such as Herbert West, Reanimator, 1922, and The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, 1927, Lovecraft masterfully re-envisions the archetypal revenant through the dispassionate prism of materialist science, thereby forging an unparalleled, distinctly modern iteration of Gothic terror. Herbert West, Reanimator, originally unveiled in 6 chilling installments for the obscure amateur periodical Homebrew, ushers us into the sinister world of an unprincipled medical student consumed by an unholy fixation, to vanquish mortality itself through alchemical intervention. Diverging sharply from the Promethean endeavors of Frankenstein, who harnessed galvanic currents and conjoined disparate corporeal fragments, West concocts a luminous, phosphorescent elixir capable of reanimating recently expired organic matter. The relentless, monomaniacal quest for this forbidden objective propels both him and his unwilling narrative accomplice into a spiraling abyss of progressively more grotesque and unsettling experiments. Have you ever contemplated the profound, terrifying implications should the veil of death prove to be not an ultimate cessation, but merely another threshold? What if the relentless march of scientific inquiry were to shatter that ultimate sacred boundary? West's preliminary subjects were mere beasts, yet his ambition swiftly escalated, leading him to desecrate the sanctity of morgues and graveyards to procure human remains for his unholy work. His inaugural triumph, a recently departed man infused with the eerie luminescence of his serum, did not stir with renewed intellect, but rather with an unthinking, bestial fury, compelling West to summarily and irrevocably conclude the ghastly endeavour. Unwavering in his dark resolve, he relentlessly pursued his abominable research, weaving it through decades of conventional medical practice, the brutal exigencies of World War I field surgery, and into the unfathomable reaches beyond. Every macabre experiment yielded subjects who returned irrevocably bereft of something vital, their very souls, their elevated cognitive functions, their intrinsic humanity. The pervasive dread intensifies as West's initial subjects, once presumed utterly annihilated, commence exhibiting a nascent, unified consciousness and a sinister, shared objective. At the narrative's chilling zenith, these resurrected husks converged upon West's clandestine laboratory, dismantling his form and absconding with the fragments, presumably to condemn him to his own unholy reanimation ritual, a torment far exceeding mere demise. Could there be a more exquisitely cruel retribution? To be transformed into the very abominable construct of your own design, ensnared within a grotesque parody of the existence you so hubristically endeavoured to rekindle. Within the chilling chronicle of Charles Dexter Ward, Lovecraft unveils a more intricate exploration of the profound mysteries surrounding corporeal resurrection. The youthful antiquarian, Charles Dexter Ward, becomes consumed by an unholy fascination for his ancestor, Joseph Serwin, a notorious Salem sorcerer, whispered to have unlocked the arcane secret of transcending mortal longevity, far beyond the natural confines of existence. Through relentless scholarly pursuit and the eventual unearthing of Serwin's concealed manuscripts, Ward assimilates and then enacts his progenitor's forbidden methodologies, not through mundane chemical injections, but via a potent fusion of alchemical lore and arcane incantation, capable of reconstituting the very essential salts of the deceased into a semblance of vital form. Ward triumphantly, yet tragically, resurrects Serwin, unleashing consequences of unspeakable horror. The malevolent sorcerer, masquerading as his own progeny, brutally extinguishes Ward's life and usurps his very identity, perpetuating his archaic, unholy experiments within the subterranean depths of the ancestral estate. These dark endeavours transcended mere reanimation, delving into the realm of spectral interrogation, summoning historical personages back to a fleeting, spectral existence to forcibly extract their ancient wisdom before consigning them once more to the oblivion of dust. The family physician, Dr. Willett, slowly, inexorably, unearths the horrifying truth. In the narrative's most chilling tableau, he ventures into the abyssal confines of Serwin's concealed laboratory, where he stumbles upon the partial, grotesque reanimation of one of the sorcerer's subjects, a monstrous blasphemy, capable only of uttering unspeakable verities before its inevitable, horrific disintegration. Curse you, Charles Ward. I forewarned you against summoning me forth devoid of the proper incantations. I declared it utterly futile if you possessed merely the words unaccompanied by their requisite symbols. Willett ultimately vanquishes Serwin, employing the sorcerer's very own arcane methodologies, but not before unearthing the horrifying revelation underpinning his reanimation practices, that they entailed a blasphemous communion with malevolent, extra-dimensional entities whose designs for humanity remained utterly unfathomable. What singular characteristic sets Lovecraft's spectral revenants apart from the conventional spectres of Gothic lore? Their grounding in a pseudo-scientific framework. West's reanimation solution, for instance, emits an eerie, Radioactive luminescence. The arcane rites of Kerwin are meticulously detailed through a lexicon of pseudo-scientific precision, invoking the very essence of essential salts and alkaloid bases. These reanimations are not spectral visitations from beyond the veil, but rather grotesque materialist distortions of cosmic order, mirroring the profound disquiet of the early 20th century regarding scientific progress unmoored from moral boundaries. H.P. Lovecraft's chilling narratives emerged from the crucible of the Great War's aftermath, an epoch where the mechanized slaughter of millions and unprecedented medical breakthroughs irrevocably reshaped humanity's perception of mortality itself. His resurrected entities serve as stark embodiments of that era's profound disillusionment. They are corporeal forms devoid of their former spiritual essence, a chilling testament that the very soul of humanity remains beyond the grasp of purely materialist endeavors. Crucially, Lovecraft's spectral returnees are bereft of the moral imperative or unfinished business that so often propels the apparitions of classic folklore. Their re-emergence is not driven by a quest for justice or the conveyance of spectral warnings, but rather by the cold, indifferent mechanics of chemical processes or the amoral precision of scientific experimentation. The true terror they evoke stems precisely from their utter lack of volition. They are not harbingers of divine retribution, but rather chilling manifestations of cosmic indifference. The universe's profound and icy apathy towards humanity's cherished constructs of natural order. This profound cosmic outlook fundamentally separates Lovecraft from the Gothic masters who preceded him. While luminaries such as Poe delved into the labyrinthine depths of psychological torment and moral corruption, Lovecraft unveiled what he termed cosmic horror, the soul-shattering dread of humanity's utter insignificance within an immeasurable, uncaring cosmos. His reanimated entities are not merely terrifying in their immediate presence, but serve as chilling harbingers of this profound philosophical dread. Have you ever gazed into the abyssal expanse of the cosmos and felt your very being shrivel into utter inconsequence? Have you ever been gripped by the chilling apprehension that the universe harbors no unique sanctuary for humankind? That our fleeting existence is but a cosmic accident, our ultimate demise, unmourned, utterly unremarked? Through seminal narratives such as Herbert West, Reanimator, and the haunting chronicle of Charles Dexter Ward, Lovecraft masterfully transmuted the archetypal Gothic revenant from a spectral, supernatural entity into a chillingly scientific abomination. No longer a harbinger of divine judgment or moral consequence, but rather a stark symptom of an indifferent, chaotic cosmic disorder. In this profound reimagining, he forged an enduring bridge between the venerable traditions of Gothic horror and the nascent genre of modern science fiction, profoundly shaping innumerable subsequent inquiries into the fragile veil separating life from oblivion, and the terrifying repercussions of breaching it through audacious technological intervention. The next time you encounter a pronouncement of a groundbreaking scientific discovery, a paradigm shift in our comprehension of existence and mortality, pause and ponder. What ancient, forbidden thresholds are being transgressed, and what unspeakable entities might stir and return through the portals we so carelessly unseal? The Canterville Ghost, a macabre farce in the shadow of the Gothic. Yet, not every narrative born from the Gothic tradition is steeped solely in pervasive dread and existential terror. Have you ever, perchance, found yourself chuckling at that which ought to evoke, "Does the spectral realm truly unnerve you?" Or have you, perhaps, unearthed a peculiar mirth within the shadows of the macabre? Oscar Wilde's The Canterville Ghost. Published in 1887, this narrative masterfully illustrates how the established tenets of a genre can be artfully subverted, forging a captivating comedic tapestry while simultaneously honoring the profound, inherent potency of Gothic traditions. This profoundly idealistic romance, as Wilde himself designated it, subtly satirizes both the archetypal haunted dwelling tales and the inherent societal friction between the unyielding pragmatism of Americans and the deeply entrenched traditionalism of the British. The narrative commences with a quintessential Gothic tableau. The venerable Canterville Chase, replete with its indelible bloodstain, the mournful lament of creaking floorboards, and its spectral inhabitant, is acquired by the resolutely modern American minister. Hiram B., Otis, and his kin. Lord Canterville, the estate's vendor, meticulously apprises Otis of the spectral entity that has ceaselessly tormented the ancestral halls for 3 centuries. Yet, the American, with an almost audacious pragmatism, utterly disregards these spectral warnings. He declares, "I surmise that if a genuine spectre truly existed in Europe, we would, in short order, possess it within one of our national museums, or parading it as a travelling exhibition." Can the venerable weight of tradition truly endure the relentless onslaught of modernity? Can the ancient, chilling spectres of the past persist against the unyielding tide of scientific skepticism and commercial pragmatism? No sooner had they taken residence than the Otis family found themselves confronted by an array of inexplicable, supernatural occurrences. The indelible bloodstain in the library, which, despite rigorous cleansing with Pinkerton's champion stain remover, perpetually remanifested, the chilling, spectral symphony of clanking chains echoing through the midnight hours. Then the very apparition of Sir Simon de Canterville himself materialized. Gaunt, with hollowed cheeks and eyes that blazed crimson, his long grey hair dishevelled, clutching a tattered, rust-encrusted dagger. Yet, rather than succumbing to terror, the Americans responded with an almost infuriating, unyielding pragmatism. Mrs. Otis, with an almost absurd composure, proffers the chain-clanking spectre a bottle of Tam-Rising Sun lubricator for his corroded manacles. Meanwhile, the younger twin sons, with mischievous intent, proceed to torment the ghost. Indeed, the youthful twin sons actively engage in the harassment of the spectral entity. Far from being terrorized, they instead lay elaborate tripwires and assail him with their pea-shooters. Concurrently, the eldest son, Washington Otis, persistently endeavors to expunge the indelible bloodstain using his potent American cleaning solution. Even the family's formidable Newfoundland hound relentlessly pursues the spectral figure through the labyrinthine corridors. Have you ever contemplated the profound existential quandary of a traditional spectre, confronted by mortals who, with an almost defiant resolve, utterly decline to be terrified? The authentic central figure of this narrative ultimately reveals himself to be Sir Simon, the very ghost rendered incapable of instilling fear. For 3 centuries, he had masterfully instilled terror into successive generations of Canterville residents, deriving immense satisfaction from his myriad, terrifying manifestations. From the Headless Earl to the Corpse Snatcher and the infamous Bloodsucker of Bexley Moor. Now, facing the unyielding force of American rationalism and an almost unnerving imperturbability, he plunges into a profound crisis of professional identity and existential desolation. Following a multitude of fruitless endeavors to instill dread within the Otis household, even deploying his most intricate disguises and terrifying performances, Sir Simon withdraws into a hidden chamber, succumbing to a profound melancholic despair. No Christmas, no witches, and no candles. Should my spectral form manifest as an embodiment of utter desolation, their sole recourse remains the mundane offering of medicinal remedies. Alas, the plight of Sir Simon. Conceive, if you dare, the profound indignity. 3 centuries of spectral dominion, meticulously cultivated, now utterly dismantled by the relentless march of American pragmatism and its ubiquitous commercial wares. A glimmer of salvation emerges through Virginia Otis, the family's 15-year-old scion. Diverging sharply from her siblings, she harbors a profound empathy for the spectral entity, particularly after discovering his lamentable weeping, born of his futile attempts to restore the crimson stain following Washington's most recent ablutions. Sir Simon recites an age-old prophecy, foretelling that his tormented spirit shall attain repose solely when a maiden of pure heart bestows upon him absolution, and the innocent supplications of children shall guide his weary soul homeward. Virginia consents to aid his spectral plight. She then traverses the ethereal barrier alongside Sir Simon, venturing into the very dominion of the departed, a perilous odyssey that plunges her household into profound terror upon the realization of her inexplicable absence. Upon her return, many hours hence, she divulges that her intercession, through fervent prayer and heartfelt tears, has guided Sir Simon to his ultimate, everlasting repose. She conducts her family to a concealed crypt, within which they discover the skeletal remains of Sir Simon. at last granted tranquillity after epochs of restless haunting. Adjacent to his repose lie the desiccated almond tree and the sundered chain, artifacts foretold within the ancient prophecy. The narrative culminates with Virginia's union in matrimony with the Duke of Cheshire. When pressed for an account of her sojourn with the spectral entity, she guards the particulars with an enigmatic silence, uttering merely, "He unveiled to me the essence of existence, the profound import of dissolution, and the transcendent power of love, which eclipses both." Wilde's profound brilliance within The Canterville Ghost resides in his singular capacity to simultaneously lampoon and venerate the established Gothic tropes. He masterfully subverts the conventional dynamic, presenting a scenario where the mortal realm inflicts torment upon the spectral rather than the inverse, yet he imbues the ghost's ultimate deliverance with authentic emotional resonance. The narrative deftly satirizes both the burgeoning American materialism, exemplified by the Otis's dependence on commercial commodities and pragmatic remedies, and the entrenched British traditionalism, manifest in the ghost's anachronistic methodologies and aristocratic affectations, ultimately discerning inherent merit within both cultural paradigms. The indelible crimson mark, which persistently remanifests despite Washington's most rigorous ablutions, serves as a potent emblem of history's unyielding defiance against contemporary endeavors to expunge its indelible traces, a pervasive motif echoing across the entirety of Wilde's literary oeuvre. Sir Simon's final emancipation is not wrought by the tenets of American pragmatism, but rather through the profound compassion and ethereal spiritual acuity embodied by Virginia, virtues that effortlessly transcend all terrestrial and national demarcations. The Canterville Ghost trailblazed a distinctive subgenre of macabre humour, a Gothic comedy that persists and flourishes within contemporary works such as The Addams Family and What We Do in the Shadows, narratives that discern the intrinsic comedic potential residing within Gothic extravagance, all while preserving a genuine fondness for the very traditions they so subtly satirize. Wilder's work unveiled the profound resilience of Gothic archetypes, demonstrating their inherent potency could absorb the intrusion of levity without surrendering their fundamental, chilling essence. Indeed, at times, much like the very fabric of existence, the terrifying and the absurd reveal themselves as mere divergent facets of an identical, underlying reality. Primal truths. Have you ever found yourself laughing to stave off a scream, or discovered the ludicrous lurking within the heart of the terrifying? Perhaps, like Oscar Wilde, you grasp that the realms of humor and horror are more intimately intertwined than we might initially perceive. Consider Jane Eyre and the Veiled Secrets of Thornfield Hall, a quintessential Gothic romance. Within its walls lay a chamber, perpetually sealed, into which no soul dared venture. So recounts Jane Eyre, describing Thornfield Hall, the imposing manor where she served as governess. Its thin wallpaper hung in tattered strips, revealing the plaster beneath. A patched and broken armchair stood sentinel, alongside a once fashionable, now time-worn dressing table. This forgotten chamber, imbued with the spectral whisper of concealed history, perfectly embodies the very Gothic elements Charlotte Brontë so masterfully wove into her narrative. Published in 1847, this novel forged one of literature's most exquisite unions of passionate romance and chilling terror. While Jane Eyre is often categorized as a Bildungsroman, or a romance rather than unadulterated Gothic fiction, its pivotal middle section, detailing Jane's sojourn at Thornfield Hall, masterfully deploys Gothic conventions to delve into themes of feminine fragility, patriarchal dominance, and the ruinous power of hidden truths. Through the skillful deployment of these very elements, Brontë transmutes what might have otherwise been a conventional tale of affection into a profound and intricate examination of societal gender roles, class stratification, and the struggle for moral autonomy. Thornfield Hall itself stands as our initial Gothic beacon, an ancient manor crowned with formidable battlements, its labyrinthine corridors echoing the dread of a Bluebeard's castle, all steeped in an atmosphere of pervasive, lurking mystery. On Jane's inaugural night within its walls, a chilling laugh pierces the silence, distinct, formal, utterly devoid of mirth reverberating through the upper floors. It is a sound both strange and lugubrious, instantly filling her with profound dread. The housekeeper, Mrs. Fairfax, swiftly attributes this unsettling sound to Grace Poole, a servant known for her peculiar habits. Yet, even this seemingly straightforward explanation fails to quell the pervasive sense of unease. Have you ever harbored the unsettling suspicion that proffered explanations were nothing more than convenient fictions? That something far more disturbing lay concealed beneath the placid surface of reassuring words? The master of the house, Edward Rochester, himself embodies and introduces further Gothic elements into this unfolding drama. He is a figure of profound brooding, sardonic wit, burdened by an enigmatic past, and prone to sudden, inexplicable shifts in temperament. Their burgeoning connection was frequently punctuated by inexplicable, unsettling occurrences. A sudden conflagration erupted within Rochester's bedchamber as he lay in slumber, from which Jane, by swift intervention, extricated him. The savage onslaught perpetrated upon a house guest, Mr. Mason, by an assailant whose presence remained shrouded in shadow. Unearthly nocturnal disturbances, culminating most dramatically in the violent rending of Jane's bridal veil on the eve of her intended union with Rochester. These escalating disturbances ultimately converge in the narrative's profound Gothic unveiling. As Jane and Rochester stand poised at the sacred altar, a solicitor abruptly intercedes, halting the solemn rites to divulge a startling truth. That Rochester is legally incapacitated from marriage, for he is already bound by the vows of matrimony. Bertha Mason, the Creole heiress he had taken as his bride in Jamaica years prior, now afflicted by madness and held captive within Thornfield's desolate attic, under the watchful, weary eye of Grace Poole. It was Bertha, then, who had been the spectral fount of the enigmatic sounds, the nocturnal acts of violence, and the insidious attempts at conflagration. Rochester then escorts Jane and the stunned wedding party to confront his hidden spouse in a tableau imbued with tremendous, chilling, Gothic power. Within the profound shadows at the chamber's furthest extremity, a form darted erratically to and fro. Its true nature, whether feral creature or human being, defied immediate discernment. It grovelled, seemingly upon all fours, its movements primal and unhinged. It snatched and emitted guttural growls, akin to some tormented, untamed beast. Yet it was draped in tattered raiment, and a profusion of dark, grizzled hair, as untamed as a wild man's mane, obscured its head and countenance. Can you conjure her image within your mind's inner sanctum? The tormented woman confined to the attic, a chilling embodiment of suppressed female fury and brutal confinement, the spectral, shadowed doppelganger of Jane herself. This profound revelation irrevocably alters our perception of every event that has transpired heretofore. The pervasive Gothic elements, far from being mere atmospheric embellishments, prove to be substantive portents, signalling the insidious presence of a terrible, festering secret at the very core of Thornfield. A clandestine truth that imperils not only Jane's burgeoning happiness, but also her very moral foundation. Rochester, in desperation, implores Jane to forsake societal convention and become his mistress, contending that his existing legal marriage is but a mere technicality, rendered meaningless by circumstance. Despite the tragic reality of his wife's affliction, Jane, though her heart was shattered, steadfastly refused to compromise her unwavering principles, and thus she fled the haunted confines of Thornfield. Emerging from a crucible of suffering and an unforeseen convergence with long-lost kin, Jane perceives an inexplicable, spiritual summons. A spectral echo of Rochester's voice, a desperate plea, traverses the seemingly insurmountable chasm between them. Upon her return, Thornfield Hall stands as a desolate, charred husk, utterly consumed by an inferno. In a climactic, self-immolating act of devastation, Bertha ignited the ancestral estate, a tragic end sealed as she plunged from the parapet into the consuming conflagration. Rochester, in a valiant yet ultimately futile endeavour to rescue his spouse and retainers, suffered the grievous cost of his sight and a limb. Jane discovers him residing in the secluded, humble dwelling known as Ferndean, where their paths converge once more, culminating in matrimony. Their union is now forged between equals, a profound parity unattainable during his reign as Thornfield's formidable master and her status as his subordinate. His grievous physical afflictions have instilled in Rochester a profound humility, while Jane's unexpected inheritance has concurrently bestowed upon her a vital financial autonomy. The intricate Gothic impediments to their bond, legal strictures, moral quandaries, and supernatural forces have been irrevocably dismantled, paving the way for a resolution that champions both fervent romantic affection and the assertion of female self-governance. What truly distinguishes Bronte's masterful application of Gothic motifs from those of her literary forebears is its profound psychological verisimilitude. Bertha transcends the archetype of a mere Gothic madwoman. She emerges as a profoundly tragic figure whose harrowing plight mirrors the novel's incisive critique of women's inherent vulnerability within the confines of patriarchal marital statutes. Rochester is far more than a conventional Byronic hero. He is a labyrinthine character whose desperate endeavours to circumvent established moral and legal constraints almost precipitate the utter ruin of both himself and the woman he cherishes. Jane herself, far from being a quiescent Gothic heroine imperiled by forces beyond her control, assertively forges her own destiny, even when that trajectory diverges from conventional romantic gratification. Have you ever confronted the stark dichotomy between fervent desire and unwavering principle, between consuming passion and unyielding integrity? Then you grasp the profound gravity of Jane's agonizing moral predicament. Through this masterful fusion of an evocative Gothic atmosphere with profound psychological depth, Bronte forged an enduring template for innumerable subsequent narratives, which similarly employ supernatural elements to probe the intricate psychological and societal realities of their eras. From the haunting echoes of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca to the unsettling narratives of Sarah Waters's The Little Stranger, the indelible legacy of Jane Eyre resonates in works that harness Gothic conventions not merely to evoke terror, but to profoundly illuminate the shadowed recesses of human experience and the intricate scaffolding of societal structures. The perennial potency of Jane Eyre resides in its exquisite equilibrium, a masterful synthesis of the rational and the enigmatic, the romantic and the Gothic, the individual psyche and the broader societal fabric. Its iconic burning edifice, the haunting spectral voices, and the tragic attic prisoner have transmuted into archetypal images within our collective cultural imagination, serving as a potent reminder that the most profound truths are often only accessible through the evocative lexicon of the uncanny. The next time an old dwelling whispers with inexplicable sounds, recall the spectral echoes of Thornfield Hall and ponder that the most perilous secrets may reside, concealed in plain sight, behind thresholds we are forbidden to breach. The spectral narratives of M.R. James, where the mundane becomes a conduit for dread. Montague Rhodes James, in the foreword to one of his compilations, asserted that a spectral tale should never culminate in self-destruction or insanity. Instead, the objective should be to instill in the reader a sensation of agreeable disquiet. Such an unassuming objective, however, conceals James's unparalleled command of the spectral narrative genre and his pervasive impact upon supernatural literature across the entire 20th century. M.R. James, who lived from 1862 to 1936, served as the esteemed provost of King's College, Cambridge, and subsequently of Eton. This distinguished medievalist's chilling tales initially served as Yuletide diversions for his pupils and fellow academics. Can you not visualize it? Within a cloistered collegiate chamber, the flickering hearths glow elongating shadows across ancient walls. The venerable professor would intone narratives of dread to an assembly of captivated youthful scholars. His collected works, released in 4 volumes spanning from 1904 to 1925, arguably embody the quintessential apotheosis of the Victorian spectral narrative, seamlessly weaving together arcane antiquarian pursuits, painstakingly crafted ambience, and instances of truly unsettling otherworldly intrusion. The archetypal protagonist in James's narratives often mirrors his own persona, a scholar or antiquarian, a man of intellect and reason whose scholarly inquisitiveness inadvertently unearths secrets that should have remained eternally interred. Consider Canon Albrecht's Scrapbook, where a researcher exploring a cathedral in the south of France procures an archaic manuscript, only to ascertain that it is accompanied by a malevolent, watchful entity. Within number 13, a historian delving into archival records in a Danish municipality stumbles upon a hotel chamber that manifests solely under the cloak of darkness. In the chilling narrative titled, "Oh Whistle, and I'll Come to You, My Lad, a professor unearths an archaic whistle upon a desolate shoreline, and upon sounding it, inadvertently invokes a spectral presence that materializes within the folds of his unoccupied bed linens. Have you ever felt an irresistible compulsion to scrutinize an object that simultaneously imbued you with an unnameable terror? Has it ever occurred to you that certain artifacts ought to remain undisturbed and particular truths forever veiled? The hallmark of James's methodology lies in his painstaking delineation of the quotidian realm, serving as a stark canvas upon which the supernatural intrusion is subsequently painted. His chosen backdrops are depicted with exacting precision. The disheveled scholar's study, the seemingly innocuous inn, the venerable ecclesiastical edifice with its distinctive structural peculiarities. His dramatis personae are steadfastly unremarkable, neither inherently heroic nor predestined for victimhood, but rather common individuals who inadvertently collide with phenomena beyond the ken of mortal understanding. It is precisely this foundation, in the tangible and familiar, that renders the incursion of the otherworldly so profoundly unsettling and impactful. When the inexplicable manifests, it shatters not a Gothic realm already primed for spectres, but the very fabric of a recognizable reality where such phenomena are deemed impossible. As James himself meticulously observed, the backdrop for these chilling narratives should be one of profound familiarity, peopled by characters and conversations indistinguishable from those encountered in daily existence. Consider the mezzotint, a seemingly innocuous engraving, arriving at a museum curator's desk, depicting an unremarkable manor house. Yet, across successive nights, the static image subtly shifts, revealing a horrifying progression. A grotesque, creeping form, drawing near the dwelling, breaching its sanctity through a window, and finally, re-emerging with a small, stolen bundle, a child. The true terror emanates not solely from the impossible animation of the artwork, but from the creeping, dreadful understanding that it chronicles a historical, heinous crime inextricably linked to the very foundations of that house. Would one avert their gaze from such an unfolding horror, or, like James's tormented characters, find themselves inexorably drawn to witness the dreadful narrative reveal itself, frame by agonizing frame? James's spectral manifestations seldom conform to the familiar, ethereal figures draped in white, a common trope of lesser tales. Rather, he unveils a chilling bestiary of the preternatural, a menagerie of diverse and unsettling entities. Imagine an entity formed from the very fabric of disheveled bedsheets, its visage a grotesque contortion of crumpled linen. Or a malevolent presence, coalescing into a swirling mass of ancient cobwebs, from which something akin to a face distorts and presses outwards from within its shadowy depths. Then there is the infernal entity, a monstrous form likened to a man, yet entirely covered in coarse hair, its terrifying presence punctuated by two immense piercing eyes. Such descriptions deliberately employ an unsettling vagueness. Thing. It. What seemed to be, compelling the reader's own mind to conjure horrors far more profound and personal than any explicit articulation could ever achieve. His narratives frequently pivot upon seemingly innocuous artifacts: a forgotten whistle, a faded picture, a leather-bound tome, a tarnished bronze crown, each serving as an unwitting conduit for malevolent, supernatural energies. These seemingly benign objects are, in truth, steeped in dark histories, bearing indelible connections to forgotten crimes or ancient, forbidden rituals, truths which the protagonists invariably unearth only when it is far too late to avert their dire consequences. This profound emphasis on accursed artifacts not only mirrors James's own deep scholarly immersion in medieval and antiquarian lore, but also masterfully anchors his spectral manifestations within the tangible, unsettling confines of physical reality. The chilling moment of supernatural revelation in a Jamesian tale almost invariably unfolds within a quiet, profoundly vulnerable setting, most famously the sanctity of the bedroom, shrouded in the deep stillness of night. In the chilling narrative of Casting the Runes, the ill-fated protagonist awakens to the terrifying sight of his own bedsheets, stirring and shifting with an unnatural, autonomous life. Within the diary of Mr. Pointer, a man's dawning horror arrives too late as he comprehends that his newly acquired curtains, woven with patterns derived from an ancient, forgotten fabric design, have undergone a sinister metamorphosis, now pulsating with a malevolent, sentient life. Such profound violations of these most intimate and ostensibly secure sanctuaries invariably evoke a particularly primal and deeply visceral form of terror. Envision the profound stillness of your nocturnal chamber, only to be disturbed by the inexplicable whisper of textiles, a creeping realization solidifying into an undeniable truth. You are no longer solitary. While James himself posited that spectral narratives ought to evoke a gentle unease rather than outright dread, his most accomplished tales invariably attain a disquieting psychological depth. Within the ash tree, the spectre of ancestral transgression manifests, haunting its progeny through the terrifying visages of arachnid monstrosities. Lost Hearts unveils a chilling tableau where the spectral remnants of a would-be cultist's child victims re-emerge, their ethereal presence, a desperate bulwark against another innocent soul, succumbing to their grim destiny. Count Magnus chronicles the perilous journey of a travel writer whose fleeting curiosity regarding a historical personage ignites a relentless, fatal chase by the resurrected aristocrat and his infernal associate. The profound impact of James's oeuvre vastly transcends its relatively modest volume. His pioneering focus on mundane environments, grotesquely invaded by tangible, supernatural phenomena, forged an enduring paradigm, subsequently adopted by literary titans from H.P. Lovecraft to Stephen King. His masterful approach, which cultivates dread through tantalizingly incomplete descriptions rather than overt, explicit detail, endures as a fundamental pillar of compelling supernatural narratives. The scholarly figures populating his tales, whose meticulous rational inquiries inexorably draw them into the abyss of the irrational, serve as archetypes for innumerable characters within contemporary horror. Crucially, James unequivocally proved that tales of the spectral need not be relegated to mere frivolous diversion or overwrought Gothic theatrics. Under his discerning authorship, the genre ascended, becoming a vessel for profound psychological introspection, resonant historical contemplation, and undeniable literary distinction. The exquisite precision of his prose, his unparalleled mastery of atmosphere, and his impeccable narrative rhythm collectively unveil a true artisan, one who meticulously applied profound literary acumen to a genre frequently relegated to the realm of simple diversion. As Dennis Stone, a character conceived by James, muses within Canon Alberic's scrapbook, following his harrowing brush with the preternatural, I was compelled to confide in another soul. The weight of these reflections has become unbearable. This inherent drive to disseminate the disquieting encounter, to draw others into the chilling embrace of such forbidden knowledge, persists even when that revelation offers no solace whatsoever. This very impulse forms the bedrock of the spectral narrative tradition, a form Mr. James refined to its zenith and bequeathed to successive generations of authors and audiences alike, who, much like his own protagonists, find themselves irresistibly compelled to peer into the veiled realms just beyond the periphery of conventional understanding. Therefore, as this night descends, and you retreat to your slumbering sanctuary, perhaps with ancient tales whispering you towards repose, let your gaze linger upon the deepening shadows that cling to the farthest reaches of your chamber. Observe for any stirrings in spaces where absolute stillness ought to reign. And should an inexplicable rustle, akin to disturbed drapery, reach your ears in the absence of any draught, then perhaps it would be prudent to avert your gaze, lest you uncover something best left unseen. Our exploration through the tenebrous corridors of Victorian Gothic literature now draws to its close, yet the narratives themselves persist, eternal. The insidious caress of Dracula's fangs, the chilling, ethereal murmur of Carmilla's presence, and the horrifying realization dawning upon Dr. Jekyll as his very essence shifts, unbidden by any alchemical draught? Do they not persist within our collective consciousness, enduring spectres, perhaps cherished companions, or formidable adversaries from the depths of time? These narratives, woven from the threads of vampiric lore, spectral visitations, fractured identities, and ancient familial maledictions, delve into the immutable verities of existence, our fleeting mortality, the insatiable nature of desire, and the profound shadows residing within the human psyche. Whether conjured from the haze of opium-induced reveries or the intensity of a fevered mind, whether conceived for mere diversion or as profound artistic statements, these Gothic chronicles endure as an indispensable cornerstone of our literary legacy. They serve as potent reminders of the formidable might of the invisible, the chilling dread of the unrevealed, and the gossamer thin membrane, dividing our mundane existence from the abyssal domains of nightmare and transcendent marvel. From the shadowed ramparts of Dracula's fortress to the desolate confines of Thornfield's hidden chamber, from the dust-laden recesses of M.R. James's spectral antiquarian haunts to the disorienting, hallucinatory geometries of Gilman's infamous yellow wallpaper, we have journeyed through realms where terror and sublime beauty intertwine. We have confronted monstrous entities, both those born of the ethereal and those forged in human depravity. We have observed the unraveling of sanity when confronted by the utterly inexplicable, and we have savored the vicarious thrill of facing, from the sanctuary of fictional narratives, the profound darkness that permeates both the external world and the hidden depths of our own souls. What accounts for the enduring resonance of these narratives? Their power lies in their address to primal fears and profound desires, impulses that far outreach their specific Victorian genesis. The primal dread of the alien, the unsettling apprehension of our own inner selves, the yearning for spiritual transcendence, the insatiable hunger for prescribed wisdom. Even in an epoch defined by scientific advancement and rational thought, these tales serve as stark reminders that enigma persists, that raw emotion often eclipses cold intellect, and that the ancient, visceral terrors of the encroaching shadow and the abyssal night have not been utterly vanquished by the advent of electric illumination. Have you perchance glimpsed a reflection of your own spirit within the labyrinthine narratives of these works? In Dorian Gray's profound dread of temporal decay, or in Dr. Jekyll's desperate internal conflict against his own shadowed compulsions, or perhaps in Jane Eyre's unyielding resolve to preserve her moral rectitude against all adversity, or in the tormented protagonists of the yellow wallpaper and similar narratives, battling to affirm their own subjective realities in a world intent on invalidating them. Should these revelations of Victorian darkness, these profound excursions into literature's most exquisitely crafted nightmares, have captivated your interest, I extend an invitation to accompany Obsidian Vault on further expeditions into the boundless realms of the Gothic imagination. The encroaching shadows stretch boundlessly, and our journey into their profound abysses has but just commenced. Until our next encounter, esteemed audience, may your forthcoming nights be imbued with tranquility, or failing that, may they at least be peopled by spectres and horrors that graciously remain sequestered within the printed pages of ancient tomes, rather than materializing at the foot of your slumbering form as the midnight hour tolls and the solitary candle flame flickers and dies in an inexplicable draught. May your dreams be untroubled,